some central and southeastern parts of England. Going into the evening then, through the overnight period, the cloud will tend to push away towards the northwest of the UK. That allows skies to clear from the southeast across most areas. We'll pay the price for that though as we go into the early hours of Tuesday. Notice the blue colours appearing on the chart quite widely, indicating a pretty widespread frost as we go into the early hours of Tuesday. Temperatures across parts of Scotland could dip down to -7, even -8 Celsius by Tuesday morning itself. Even further south, temperatures a few degrees below freezing. So we start Tuesday then with that frost around, and that will only slowly lift across some southern and central parts of Scotland there, and elsewhere with plenty of sunshine around though, and fairly gentle winds. It shouldn't feel too bad out and about. That sunshine pretty much wall to wall for many parts of the UK. Just a bit of patchy cloud there towards the far northeast and an isolated shower there. But notice the temperature still pretty disappointing in the range 6 to 11 Celsius.
Expect a warm front moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. The M8 in Renfrewshire is partly blocked westbound by an accident at junction 26 at Hillington, causing delays. In Tyne and Wear on the A189, there's a lane closed southbound where a bus has broken down. On Killingworth Road at South Gosforth, causing delays. In County Durham, there's a report the A19 is partly blocked southbound at the Norton interchange with queues towards there. In Warwickshire, the A452 is closed northbound along Europa Way from the A425 towards Leamington for repairs after a lorry caught fire on Friday morning. In Hertfordshire, the A41 is closed each way between Tring and Berkhamsted after an accident. On the M2 in Kent, there's a lane closed eastbound just after junction 5 at Sittingbourne, where a vehicle has a puncture causing queues for around 3 miles. And on the M27 in Hampshire, there's a lane closed westbound where someone's broken down between junctions 11 and 10 near Fareham, causing delays.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Good morning. Are you all right?
I am all right. All the better for seeing you, my friend.
John, you've been through so much. We've just heard there about you losing your wife and losing your daughter. I'm so sorry to hear about both of those things. And despite all of that and everything you've been through, you continue to just give back. How can you do that? Just take something so negative and turn it into something so positive?
Well, Sheffield is the finest city in England. That's what I think about the Sheffield people and everybody. 250,000 I set out. I beat that. I got that. Just what's got in bucket. So I thought, well, set go ports a bit, are you? So we over 500. And we got that. And I thought, well, why not go say for 1 million? And we got 1 million. This is what I think about my people of Sheffield. It's just entitled my city. Sheffield, my city, that will always be home to me, no matter where I go or whatever sights I will see. Wherever I return, church bells will peal as I come home to the city of steel. A cathedral, cinemas, museums, Sheffield has such beautiful places. Home to a host of people of so many races, living and working in perfect harmony. That's why Sheffield is the greatest place to be. Singing the praises of Sheffield, Sheffield, my Sheffield, as I go forth. For now we are the sporting city of the north. Wonderful people, so happy, so helpful, so kind. Sheffield, no better place you will find.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good morning. At 9:30 on Monday, the 17th of March, live across the UK. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us. So, there's a welfare war brewing. The government has buckled under pressure to keep personal independence payments in place, but they're still hoping to slash the benefits bill. Where should they make those cuts?
And the asylum appeals backlog. Nearly 42,000 asylum seekers are awaiting appeal hearings after bids to remain in Britain were rejected. A 500% rise in the number of rejections may sound like good news. The system is not able to cope with their subsequent appeals. And where are they? They're in hotels at public expense.
And are we looking at an education emergency? The former head of Ofsted has slammed the Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, accusing her of putting the interests of unions ahead of children.
Here we go. Shakespeare's racist roots, of course. William Shakespeare's birthplace is set to be decolonised over concerns the playwright promoted white supremacy. Wherefore art thou? Common sense, indeed.
And there has been a shocking decline in work ethic. 4 in 10 Generation Z employees plan to leave their job and sign up for benefits. What has gone wrong?
Well, I don't think we should pay them the benefits. And Britain's new Wimbledon hope, 23-year-old Jack Draper, becomes the 5th British man to win a Masters 1000 title. Former British tennis number 1 Andrew Castle is going to tell us just how far he thinks Jack can go.
And what a celebration. Newcastle United beat Liverpool to win the Carabao Cup yesterday, their first domestic trophy in 70 years. They look quite pleased with that result, don't they?
They certainly do, and I'm very pleased for them. Happy St Patrick's Day. Celebrations are taking place all over Britain today. I got my first St Patrick's card ever. Let us know today how you're celebrating, if you are indeed celebrating St Patrick's Day, March the 17th.
You got your first St Patrick's Day card?
I did.
What is that? Who off?
It's from, because I wrote my book, Finding Margaret, about finding my birth mother, who was Irish.
Oh, of course.
And it's from her family in Bolton Glass in Ireland. How nice is
Lovely.
that?
So that has really special meaning for you then, doesn't it?
Really, really special. So that's got pride of place on the mantelpiece. I've never had one before.
No, I didn't know there was such a thing.
Yep.
I mean, look, I've got my green dress on today. Did realise that Ellie Costello and I were wearing literally the same dress. She didn't give me hers as she left, just to be clear. But we are celebrating this morning. Let us know if you are, gbnews.com/your say. Lots to get through between now and midday. First, though, here's your news with Sophia.
Bev, Andrew, thank you. Good morning. These are your headlines from the GB Newsroom. The Prime Minister is facing growing discontent as the government prepares to unveil a major overhaul of the welfare system. Work and Pension Secretary Liz Kendall will set out plans to restrict some sickness and disability benefits tomorrow, meaning only the most severely disabled will be able to qualify. But with some MPs already rebelling, the plans are likely to be opposed by those in the party who are concerned about the attempts to slash the welfare bill. It follows comments from the Health Secretary that the UK is overdiagnosing mental health conditions, with the number of people claiming disability benefits for anxiety and depression doubling in the past decade. In other news, Donald Trump has said he will speak to Vladimir Putin tomorrow about ending the war in Ukraine and dividing up certain assets. The US president said he and Putin will discuss land and power plants when they hold talks. US officials have expressed optimism that a ceasefire deal could be reached within weeks, while Russia's deputy foreign minister has insisted Ukraine must be excluded from NATO membership as part of its ironclad security guarantees for a peace deal. Meanwhile, Ukrainian and Russian drone attacks continued overnight. Kyiv Mayor Vitaly Klitschko said the city was attacked, while damage was also reported from a Ukrainian strike in southern Russia. Now, police in North Macedonia have made 20 arrests after at least 59 people were killed in a fire at a nightclub. Authorities said 155 others were injured after the blaze broke out at Pulse in the eastern town of Kokani at around 2:35 a.m. yesterday morning. Government officials and the manager of the club, which did not have a valid licence, are among those arrested in connection with the fire. The country has declared a 7-day period of mourning for the victims. And a surge of failed asylum seekers has left the system struggling to cope, according to new figures. The number of failed asylum seekers waiting for an appeal against their rejection claims has soared by nearly 500% in 2 years and is blocking efforts to move migrants out of hotels. New data revealed there were 41,987 individuals waiting for a decision at the end of last year. That's up from just 7,173 at the start of 2022. The Refugee Council said the government risks simply moving the asylum crisis from one part of the system to another, with almost 40,000 migrants still housed in hotels. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in half an hour.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us. Another Monday morning. Hope you had a lovely weekend. Now, we've got obviously a bit of a crisis, haven't we, amongst our young people, it seems. A quarter of Generation Z, as we're calling them, considering quitting work as young Brits cite mental health as a key reason for being unemployed.
I'm sorry, if they quit work because they're fed up working, they shouldn't get any benefits.
But you see, and I think there's a whole generation probably who would never normally have been that benefits culture. So, you know how some families actually have a benefits culture, they just pass it down.
Yeah.
And there are other families who would never have claimed anything from the state, and then the pandemic happened and the government were liberally handing out furlough, stay at home, have a barbecue, it's sunny. And so we've normalised the state supporting these young kids because they're like, well, why would I not take it? And they're resentful that people who they think shouldn't have it have got it as well. As in illegal migrants in hotels.
Yeah. But you see, the Secretary of State for Health, Wes Streeting, said yesterday we're over-subscribing the idea of mental health. Because a lot of these kids who want to stop working, it's their mental health.
That's what they're saying.
And it's become an epidemic.
This is also...
It used to be, when we were growing up, pull yourself together. I do get that, of course, some people genuinely have mental health issues, of course. But how many?
Not as many as that, but of course this is also the generation who have been told at school that they've been encouraged to discuss their mental health, and that isn't a bad thing. But the overcompensation, the pendulum swing has gone so far. I think I remember telling you in one of the mental health weeks, my daughter, when she was about 14, and she came home and she went, I think I need to have a mental health condition because all they're talking about all week is mental health. And you know what? Teenagers are very, very suggestible. So if you tell them they should feel something, they're going to feel it. That's part of the condition. So we've made them weak, actually. I know that's a controversial thing to say. We've made a whole generation of young people weak. We've asked them to sit at home and think about themselves, think about who they are, think about how they feel. And it's gone so far that now they sit at home and go, I don't want to go to work.
And they spend too much time in their bedrooms on their devices and not enough time outside, not enough time talking to people.
They don't
even talk to their own families.
Completely. Why did we want to go to work when we were younger? You know why? Because otherwise we'd be bored. This generation are never, ever bored because they are constantly stimulated by their phones.
I also needed money.
And we needed money as well. But this is the thing. They're demoralised, all right? And I'm seeing it from both sides because I am impatient with that generation for not helping themselves, but I can also see how we've made this happen. These 18 to 24-year-olds particularly, in the pandemic, that was the work experience that they would have been having. They would have had Saturday jobs, work experience, sports to keep them motivated. We ripped it all away for a couple of years, and it's like they're immature. Yeah. They haven't grown up. They haven't had those normal stages of development. I don't know how we fix it.
They've become too dependent.
They become very dependent. They have become sluggish, lazy, unmotivated. They have bad diets. They don't do enough sport.
And also, of course, a lot of them are still living at home because they can't afford their own place.
That's right.
And if you've got your own place, that creates a form of independence.
And just to give you an example, a friend of my son just recently put money, £2,000 to train as a personal trainer. He thought, right, I'll do something. He works for one of the big gyms. He does personal training for them. They take a massive cut of his salary. So by the end of the month, his mum was saying to me, but Bev, he's left with £250 at the end of the month at 20 years old. That's what he's got to live off. And he says, everything is so expensive, as we know. Just go into the supermarket, go to a bar, restaurant, everything is cripplingly expensive. So we've got a generation that are demoralised. Say, what's the point?
2 glasses of wine, nearly 20 quid.
Exactly. It's rough for kids, it's rough for the youngsters, but somehow we've got to fix it.
Now, the government's going to unveil tomorrow an overhaul of the disability benefits system. And they say, and it's all to do with personal independence payments. They were going to freeze the benefits next year, but now we think they're going to make it more difficult to qualify for them in the first place.
That's right. So only the most severely disabled will be able to qualify. MPs are already rebelling over the plans. And the government U-turning on these payments, it's going to cause a big conflict, this, isn't it, within the Labour Party?
Yeah, this is a huge problem for Labour because a lot of Labour MPs you talk to, they say, I didn't come into Parliament to cut benefits from our sickest people.
Yeah.
The Economic Secretary, the Treasurer, Emma Reynolds, was challenged earlier on whether the government is becoming Tory-light.
We are not a Tory government. We're nothing like a Tory government. So I would refute those allegations. And with regard to social security reform, there is nothing progressive about locking that many people out of the labour market, because we believe in the dignity of work and we believe in tailoring support to enable those people who can work to get back into work.
Sumi Rabindra Kumar is the Head of Policy and Research at the Trussle Trust. Good morning to you, Sumi. Your response to this idea that it's going to be harder for some people to claim their disability benefits?
I think it's deeply worrying, the scale of cuts that we're looking at. The majority of people who come to food banks in the Trussle community are already disabled or live with someone who's disabled. So we know there's a really high level of need out there. And what we're talking about, we heard some reassurances there about people who'd be protected, but when we look at the scale of these cuts, we're looking at reportedly 5 to 6 billion. It's quite hard to see how people with quite high levels of need will escape being affected. And also, secondly, although it's welcome to hear that people with the greatest level of need or the most severest conditions will be protected, it's quite concerning to know what will happen to those people who aren't. So it's quite likely that there'll be people who have quite high levels of need but won't be immediately ready to enter work. They are set to lose hundreds of thousands of pounds a year, perhaps thousands of pounds a year, hundreds of pounds a year, or perhaps thousands of pounds a year. What will happen to those people if they can't make up that money through work straight away? What we see when that happens is that people can't afford to put food on the table, their health conditions get worse as a result, and they are forced to the doors of food banks, and that's deeply concerning.
I heard a disability rights campaigner this morning objecting to the idea there could be an annual review of her disability payments because it's very difficult to be put through that sort of thing. Why shouldn't there be regular reviews of people, whether some people may be getting better and therefore don't need as much disability money? Some people, of course, may be getting worse.
Well, it's right that there are appropriate levels of assessment within the system. What we hear at our end at food banks is that those assessments can be really gruelling, and they're often not done by specialist assessors, so not done by people who understand the conditions that people are facing. And so we see the other side of the coin, that they can affect people's mental health. They often feel like they are being judged and they're being accused of something of doing something wrong. And that puts a real level of mistrust in the system for disabled people. And that's something that we would hope to be addressed in the announcements tomorrow.
But the disability benefits bill is soaring every year. And talk it's going to go, it could be by 100 billion by 2030. Why are we spending so much? Why are there so many more people, in your view, who are qualifying for disability benefit? We're a rich, healthy nation, aren't we?
Well, when you look at the evidence, there is evidence that people are getting sicker when you look at the health statistics. We also know that some of this change is because of policy change.
Why are they getting sicker?
So it's hard to tell. Some of this has escalated since the pandemic. And we know that some of the mental health conditions, some of those rates have escalated. But there have been longer-term trends in things like musculoskeletal conditions and other conditions which predates the pandemic, and that's something that we need to get to grips with. But that is an issue for the healthcare system. That is not an issue for the social security system. We also know that there are policy choices. So, for example, we've got an ageing population, the state pension age has risen, and therefore more people are caught up in the disability benefit system as a result. So these are things that aren't immediately fixed by cutting benefits, by cutting people's incomes, and cutting them so drastically as we're hearing in reports over the weekend and over the past few weeks. And that's what is deeply concerning for people who see disabled people day in, day out, see their struggles for putting food on the table, and are deeply worried about what these changes will entail.
OK, interesting. Thank you, Sumi. Sumi Rabindra Kumar there, Head of Policy and Research at the Trussle Trust, who, of course, run the food banks. I thought what Emma Reynolds was saying there about the fact that work is good for dignity is something we've got to remember. Because the idea of queuing up to go to a food bank, and then claim your benefits from the state. That cannot be as good as getting up in the morning, doing a day's work, getting paid for it, and having that sense of purpose.
I quite agree.
It's one of the pillars of a healthy life, isn't it? Is purpose. And we seem to have a generation, or too many people, who just don't seem to have any purpose.
We've made it too easy for people to live on benefits. The benefit system should be a fallback system. There shouldn't be a way of life.
Correct. It's become a lifestyle.
It has.
But there's clearly something gone wrong there. I think the key question there, Andrew, is what you said about why are we so much less healthy? Why are people so ill all the time?
Yeah.
What have we done in this country? We are supposed to be a wealthy country, which means people are overweight, out of shape, out of fitness, out of work. It's not good enough.
Really isn't. Now, up next, Bev's in her green colours today. It is, of course, St Patrick's Day, March the 17th. We're off to Downpatrick to celebrate. But first, if you're in search of some winter sun, I don't suppose there's much of that in Ireland at the moment, here is the forecast of some of our top European holiday destinations.
I hope it doesn't rain.
Don't worry about it.
It'll spoil our holiday.
Relax, we're totally covered.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Hello, here's your latest winter sun forecast brought to you by the Met Office. There'll be some unsettled weather across Iberia over the next few days. Elsewhere, some sunshine and a few showers too. As for Tuesday, we can expect a few showers across the Canaries, Madeira, some more persistent rain across parts of Spain and Portugal. The central Med looks brighter, 1 or 2 showers around, and then we run into some more persistent rain again across parts of Greece with some hill snow in places here too. As for the rest of the week, well, there'll be some warm sunshine to contend with, 1 or 2 showers too, and some more persistent rain out across western spots.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, weekdays from 9 p.m.
You can smack, thwack, thump, and everyone's got a different definition of what it is.
I'm not an idiot.
Smacking
And most parents aren't idiots. They can draw a distinction between those. Lazy, shortcut parenting, and there's no case in which it's justified. Smacking spreads. So you smack one, they're going to smack their siblings. They're going to go into school and disagree with other children and give them a whack. And then what about, do you give proxy rights to teachers, nursery workers? No.
No, you don't. So you love your child so much that you're going to smack them. Only you. It's special for you.
Hang on a minute, Anna May. Are you, just so we're clear, Anna May, are you accusing Bev of being a bad mother or something here?
I'm saying I can't believe that in 2025 somebody would come on TV and defend doing something to a child that wouldn't be acceptable to a
Bev,
dog.
do you want to come back to that?
If you smack a dog in the street, Bev, if you smack a dog in the street,
is almost every parent is smacking their child, except they won't admit it. And so what you've developed by that sort of parenting, it is true, is you've developed a culture of shame, whereby parents might have that instinct, as mammals will have, whether it's a monkey or a cat or a lion. In the natural world, the adult, the parent of that young cub, whatever it is, will occasionally.
What are we talking about this? Are we talking about hurting children with your hand, and also not even having a standard? Paediatricians are saying don't do it. And also this argument, I know what's going to come next. You're going to say, oh, the police could be involved. Aren't they going to be too busy to do this? Guess what? Children can't dial 999, particularly the very young ones.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Bev until midday.
Happy St Patrick's Day. So millions across the globe are gathering to mark this very special occasion.
So let's go to GB News' Northern Ireland reporter, Doogie Beattie, who is in Downpatrick. What's happening there this morning, Doogie?
Well, good morning, Bev. Benidorm on Saturday. Here we are, 5th century reenactment. Yeah, we're at the village here. We're at the village, and this is exactly what would have been going on during the time of St Patrick. And you can see down here, actually, some of the stuff. This would have been leather work that was done rather than the chainmail beside us. And joining me now is Philip Campbell. Philip, you're responsible for a lot of this reenactment. Talk us through what we're looking at here.
Well, basically what we have is a setup of early medieval Ireland, and we're letting the public come in and see the sort of activities that went on around the middle of the 5th century, around about the time that Patrick landed. Now, Ireland was a series of system of clans. Basically, they were known as kings. There was something like 350 kingdoms, but this was the Dalfedic, the land of the Dalfedic where we are now. So what we have is a bit of spread of some bits and pieces. If I walk around, you can see some of the different artifacts. So if you want to follow me,
yeah, let's go. Let's have a look. See.
Well, what we have first of all here, we're at the armoury end of it. We've got what was known as lamlar armour. Irish warriors would have preferred leather rather than what you can see here, which is chainmail. Chainmail come in much later. The Celt sword was more like a 10-year shorter broadsword, something similar to this. Whereas later stages, you got this type of sword here, which was much more ornate. You know. They always sort of had this symbolic system on the swords, which this bit would have been closer put together, and it formed like two arms and 2 legs, and this was the body, which is what you gripped, you know, but very, very effective.
And basically, I can tell you, this helmet in particular is a copy, and it is extremely heavy. And we'll go along a little bit. Yeah, we'll go along a little bit. Come on with us, because there's quite a lot going on here. You can see the tools there. You can see quite a lot of the armory and stuff that's going there, and it's all designed to educate the locals here in what St Patrick was just about. He was brought here as a slave. He escaped, returned back to Britain, and then came back to teach Christianity to the Irish, and to this day is still the patron saint. So you can see the culture and history here really starting to take off before the main parade starts at just after midday.
Fantastic. Thank you, Doogie. And I'm glad to see you got back from Benidorm in one piece after doing the Cheltenham races for us there over the weekend. That looked like fun. Do you know, we don't do St George's Day in the same way that we do St Patrick's Day. I suspect
if you asked even a cross-section of people in this building when is St George's Day, they might not know.
I don't know.
It's April the 23rd.
Oh, thanks for telling me.
Yeah.
We the
don't
English,
celebrate it.
You know, we're very self-effacing, the English, aren't we? We don't like to make a fuss or celebrate our identity. And even Shakespeare now is getting criticised for being a racist.
In my junior school, all the Irish kids, which was just about 99% of them, wore shamrock on their blazer on St Patrick's Day. And the same in the secondary school.
Isn't it sad? Because the St George's flag has become a sign that, you know, it's become shameful somehow, associated with a sort of extreme nationalism.
They think the racists hijacked it, and it is a shame.
We have to claim that back.
We should. Now, still to come is Jack Draper, Britain's next big Wimbledon hope. He won a big tournament yesterday. The former British tennis number 1, Andrew Castle, joins soon. He's a great man, Andrew Castle.
He is. See you in a minute.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. We'll see plenty of sunshine across the UK today, a lot of fine weather in store, but temperatures are still pretty disappointing for the time of year. High pressure is generally in charge at the moment, and that's given plenty of sunshine across the northwest of the UK this morning. Quite a frosty start here though. Elsewhere more in the way of cloud around, and that's making the frost more patchy, and also the cloud thick enough down towards the southwest to give 1 or 2 showers during the first part of the day. As we head through into the afternoon, cloud will tend to increase across the northwest, and on the whole, many southern and western parts of the UK will see a fair bit of cloud around, but the best of the sunshine by this point across the east and southeast of England, and temperatures in the range 7 to 10 Celsius. 10 down towards the southeast is 50 in Fahrenheit. So we end the afternoon with quite a bit of sunshine across the mainland of Scotland, a bit of patchy cloud up towards the Northern Isles, and across some southern and central parts of mainland Scotland there. For Northern Ireland, also some patchy cloud around with the best of the sunshine across the east of Northern Ireland, whereas for England and Wales, a bit of an east-west split to end the day. Certainly a fair bit of cloud across Wales and the southwest of England, with the best of the late sunshine reserved for some central and eastern southeastern parts of England. Going into the evening then, through the overnight period, the cloud will tend to push away towards the northwest of the UK. That allows skies to clear from the southeast across most areas. We'll pay the price for that though as we go into the early hours of Tuesday. Notice the blue colours appearing on the chart quite widely, indicating a pretty widespread frost as we go into the early hours of Tuesday. Temperatures across parts of Scotland could dip down to -7, even -8 Celsius by Tuesday morning itself. Even further south, temperatures a few degrees below freezing. So we start Tuesday then with that frost around, and that will only slowly lift across some southern and central parts of Scotland there, and elsewhere with plenty of sunshine around though, and fairly gentle winds. It shouldn't feel too bad out and about. That sunshine pretty much wall to wall for many parts of the UK. Just a bit of patchy cloud there towards the far northeast and an isolated shower there. But notice the temperature still pretty disappointing in the range 6 to 11 Celsius.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. The A720 Edinburgh City bypass is partly blocked westbound by an accident at the Dreghorn Junction. The Glasgow subway suspended because of a power failure. In County Durham, the A19 is partly blocked southbound by an accident at the Norton interchange at Billingham, causing queues. In West Yorkshire, Harden Road in Bingley is blocked by an accident causing queues. In Warwickshire, the A452 is closed northbound along Europa Way towards Leamington for repairs after a lorry caught fire on Friday morning. In Pembrokeshire, the A477 is closed each way over the Cleddau Bridge because of an accident. In Hertfordshire, the A41 is closed each way between Tring and Berkhamsted because of emergency repairs after an accident. And on the M2 in Kent, there's a lane closed eastbound just after junction 5 at Sittingbourne after a vehicle had a puncture causing roughly 3 miles of queues. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
You could be the next big winner of the Great British Giveaway, as we have an incredible £17,777 in tax-free cash to be won. Cash that you'll be able to spend on anything you like. And if that wasn't enough, we'll also give you the latest Mulberry handbag, and not 1, but 2 sought-after designer watches, so you can style it out this spring. For another chance to win the lot, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
please bring us up to date.
Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 10 o'clock on Monday the 17th of March. Happy St Patrick's Day. We are live across the UK. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Well, the war on welfare, the government has buckled already under pressure to keep to freeze those personal independence payments next year, but they say they will cut the benefits bill. Where should they do so? Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Emma Reynolds, had this to say.
There is nothing progressive about locking that many people out of the labour market.
So we have this massive asylum appeals backlog. Nearly 42,000 asylum seekers are awaiting appeal for hearings after bids to remain in Britain were rejected. A 500% rise in rejections might sound like good news, but the system cannot cope with their subsequent appeals. They're languishing in hotels at your expense.
How many appeals are they allowed? That's the point. Now, education emergency. The former head of Ofsted has slammed the Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson. She says she's in thrall to the trade unions, much more so than putting the interests of children first.
And what has happened to our work ethic? 4 in 10 of Generation Z plan to leave their job and sign up for benefits. Why?
Is he Britain's next Wimbledon hope? 23-year-old Jack Draper becomes only the 5th British man to win a Masters 1000 title. We're going to talk to the former British tennis number one, Andrew Castle, who's going to tell us how far he thinks Jack can go.
And you might have seen this in the papers over the weekend. The former Conservative Minister, Mark Field, is joining us to tell us about his new book, The End of an Era. You might have seen the headlines about Liz Truss yesterday.
Shakespeare's racist roots? Oh yes, I'm afraid so. William Shakespeare's birthplace is to be decolonized over concerns the playwright promoted white supremacy. To be or not to be dismayed? That's the question, not the corny question we're asking.
So Mark Field, who's wrote that book, is going to come and talk to us. He's a mate of yours, is he?
He is. I've known him for a long time. So he's written the book. He basically says Britain is in terminal decline, it had its moment when there was a revival under Thatcherism. But also, he's asking, it's the Tory party in terminal decline too. But what's caught everybody's eye, of course, there was a chapter because 20 years ago he had an affair with a rising young star called Liz Truss. It broke up his first marriage. It didn't break up hers. She's still married to the same man. It's an extraordinary story. So you won't want to miss that.
Yes, stay with us. GBNews.com/YourSay. We're going to go and read your comments now while we listen to the news with Sophia Wensler.
Bev, Andrew, thank you. Good morning. It's just gone 10 o'clock. These are your headlines. The Prime Minister is facing growing discontent as the government prepares to unveil a major overhaul of the welfare system. Work and Pension Secretary Liz Kendall will set out plans to restrict some sickness and disability benefits tomorrow, meaning only the most severely disabled will be able to qualify. But with some MPs already rebelling, the plans are likely to be opposed by those in the party who are concerned about the attempts to slash the welfare bill. It follows criticism that the UK is overdiagnosing mental health conditions, with the number of people claiming disability benefits for anxiety and depression doubling in the past decade. Economic Secretary to the Treasury, Emma Reynolds, agrees with this, but she assured GB News the most vulnerable would be protected.
We need to follow the evidence on this, but we have about 1,000 people every day claiming personal independence payments. That seems out of kilter with the prevalence of some of these conditions. We do need to help people and tailor their support, but we also need to look at the assessment system and see how that needs to be reformed. So yes, there are big problems here that we intend to solve, and as I've said, Liz Kendall will set out the package of measures. We set up the welfare state in 1945, and those with severe disabilities and the most vulnerable will be protected. We believe in the safety net, and we believe in helping those people.
Elsewhere, the former head of Ofsted has hit out at the Education Secretary, accusing Bridget Phillipson of putting the interests of unions ahead of children. Amanda Spielman, who stepped down as Chief Inspector at the school's watchdog at the end of 2023, called on Bridget Phillipson to abandon her plans before the damage is done. Writing in The Telegraph on the eve of the Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill returning to Parliament, she accused the Education Secretary of bowing to the demands of unions. Critics have claimed the reforms in the bill will significantly curb freedoms for academies, state-funded schools able to set their own pay and curriculum that are unpopular with some teaching unions. Meanwhile, Shadow Education Minister Neil O'Brien told GB News Bridget Phillipson should ask herself why so many teachers are against her plans.
The schools bill, which really is a piece of vandalism, it's undoing the cross-party reforms of the last 30 or 40 years, which started with Mrs Thatcher and have continued ever since. And those reforms have worked. England's schools have gone up the international league tables, where they've done things differently in Labour-run Wales and in Scotland. They've gone down the international league tables. And now Bridget is bringing the same ideas, the same failed ideas, to England as well. It's so depressing that she is pushing all this stuff through, and she should be asking herself, why are so many teachers, why are so many leaders of schools desperately worried about this bill that we're passing? And there's no sign of any reflection on why so many teachers are against this.
To the US now, where Donald Trump has said he will speak to Vladimir Putin tomorrow about ending the war in Ukraine and dividing up certain assets. The US president said he and Putin will discuss land and power plants when they hold talks. US officials have expressed optimism that a ceasefire deal could be reached within weeks, while Russia's deputy foreign minister has insisted Ukraine must be excluded from NATO membership as part of its ironclad security guarantees for a peace deal. Meanwhile, Ukrainian and Russian drone attacks have continued overnight. Kyiv Mayor Vitaly Klitschko said the city was attacked, while damage was reported from a Ukrainian strike in southern Russia. Now, a surge of failed asylum seekers has left the system struggling to cope, according to new figures. The number of failed asylum seekers waiting for an appeal against their rejected claims has soared by nearly 500% in 2 years and is blocking efforts to move migrants out of hotels. New data reveals there were 41,987 individuals waiting for a decision at the end of last year. That's up from just 7,173 at the start of 2022. The Refugee Council said the government risks simply moving the asylum crisis from one part of the system to another, with almost 40,000 migrants still housed in hotels. Now, a British tourist is missing after a fire broke out on a diving boat in Thailand. 26-year-old backpacker Alexandra Clark was reportedly in the bathroom when the blaze started on Sunday morning local time. Local police have said at least 16 people on board the boat were tourists. We will bring you more on this story as we get it. And there were tears of joy last night for Geordies as Newcastle United beat Liverpool to win the Carabao Cup, their first domestic trophy in 70 years. Dan Burn and Alexander Isak scored either side of half-time to give Newcastle the control they deserved. As the final whistle blew to confirm their 2-1 win, a giant black and white wave of celebration swept around the stadium that had delivered 9 successive defeats since Newcastle won the 1955 FA Cup. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Andrew and Bev.
Welcome back.
Britain's Newsroom, live across the UK, Andrew and Bev. Lots of people getting in touch, I think, Bev.
Yeah, they have. Richard says, in reality, people in this country have never been better off. What have a lot done with them? With that, sat around doing nothing, let their minds run away with their thoughts about how bad their lot is. There's a lot of truth in that. We've also got, because this is about the generation work shy we're talking about, they also expect to have everything immediately. It's kind of generation entitled as well. Andrew says, you're so right, Bev. Thank you. I like a message that starts like that. I've recently retired after over 50 years of work. The change in my physical and mental condition is staggering, so I'm now actively researching voluntary work to give me a purpose. That's what we were talking about work not just being about not taking money off the state, but just about the fact that it's good for you to have a reason to get out of bed in the morning. David, morning David. Hi Bev and Andrew. If you're overweight on benefits, you're getting too many benefits. What is classed as subsistence living? Would somebody ask the government ministers, what is the definition of working class? Probably the same answer as what is a woman?
Yeah.
Very clever.
They'd
yeah.
struggle.
And Jack says the Trussle Trust do not spend 30% of the money donated to them on food. Not the best group to comment on the best way to spend benefit money. I don't know the veracity of that, Jack, to be honest. And Ginger Witch says, I've worked all my life since the age of 15. Now I'm 50. I have a chronic pain condition as well as other illnesses. I worked as long as I could until I couldn't cope with the pain. I then had to fight for PIP for over a year. After a very degrading and insulting assessment, the judge at the tribunal was disgusted that it had gone to court in the first place. I was still only awarded standard on both daily living and mobility. It was very hard to get PIP, and yet I see junkies where I live getting full amount while I struggle. The whole system does need to change, but for the right people, not the work shy, who are a waste of oxygen. That's the problem.
Yeah.
People who are gaming the system are not thinking about those who genuinely need support.
Well, they don't care. We've got Chris Hope's in the studio with us, our political editor. Chris, this is turning into a big problem now for Keir Starmer's government. It seemed a few weeks ago they were coasting to the idea that they were going to freeze these personal independence payments next year. Now, even the Tories didn't do that.
No.
But there's been...
George Osborne, you mean by that,
yeah,
don't you?
Yeah, I do.
Back in the day, in austerity time.
When he did austerity, that was one cut.
Step too far.
He didn't do. And so they have a huge majority. They would have to have a vote on it, but that vote could have been really embarrassing, could have been probably his biggest rebellion.
So the changes we're going to see probably tomorrow from Liz Kendall won't require a vote now if they drop this PIP being frozen. Yeah. This is called personal independence payment. It's extra living costs for people who have long-term physical or mental health conditions. I find it, stepping back, what all this means is this kind of move towards the centre ground, almost the right wing of politics by Labour, is kind of stopping, grinding to a halt. We saw the A budget being cut, money going on defence, civil services jobs going, NHS England, Quang goes, the winter fuel payment, lots of measures which you might see as a kind of Tory agenda. This was almost the final straw for some on the left of the party, I think. The Tory party, of course, fought the election to cut, I think, 20 billion off the welfare bill by the end of this decade, and this was going to go cut 6 billion. It may now not do as much. I think almost a line has been drawn here by left-wing Labour MPs.
So they've got to find these savings because the economy went back into negative territory last month. Borrowing is soaring. So where will they find the money?
I don't know. I mean, we don't know yet, do we? That she's tied in by these pledges at the election. So, you know, she's not going to increase income tax, national insurance any further than for individuals, but they are doing it, of course, for companies. So, yeah, it's not clear at all, and that's the big worry. I was looking at the figures today. It is alarming, I think, that PwC report, front page of the Daily Mail, and also in today's Telegraph. The UK remains the only country with fewer people in work than before, of G7 countries, than before the COVID lockdown.
Amazing, isn't it?
It's amazing. I mean, other countries have got past the lockdown. Today is an anniversary for many people. I think the schools went out 5 years ago tomorrow.
22% of the working population is not at work. 22%. That's a fifth. It's staggering.
Some of them,
with these people?
and some of them will be. It was such a significant event, the pandemic. Some people genuinely reassessed what life meant to them.
Yes.
And there will be some people, particularly women, I would say, who spent more time with their children and then said, actually, I don't want to go back to work. I want to be a full-time mother.
Yes.
That's OK. But there's not enough detail in these figures. I really would love
shocking, actually.
somebody to be looking into where have all those people gone from the workplace.
I think there's some choices made by the last Tory government. They said if you're in your 50s, retire early, go to the golf course. And without Jeremy Hunt saying that, I think you regret saying that. It took many people who are at their peak of their earning power out of paying more tax, more in tax. And don't forget, by the way, in about 2 weeks' time, we've got this massive day when the national insurance comes in for 2% on employers employing people. Big hike in minimum wage, other increases too. So there's real downward pressure on working at all at the moment.
Yeah, and that's going to the rise in the employment, the national insurance, because it's going to really hit the hospitality industry.
Yeah,
I think you just can see.
Well, both ways, both the minimum wage and the increase.
Because they're going to pay them more, and then the national insurance has increased. Yeah, and there's talk of all these companies freezing their employment or axing staff.
I think this Labour government's got to try and look at what is it for? Why is it in power? Is it in power to take away benefits from? You know, some would say people do need benefits, but it seems to me that the system has gone out of control recently.
What happened to growth?
Yeah,
well, there isn't any, and that's what's so interesting, Chris, isn't it? I think we didn't know who this government was going to be. I think they just weren't the Tories when they got voted into number 10. Everybody just had a very open mind. We had our fingers crossed, and so when they keep introducing these policies, like, oh, that's who you are. Oh no, you're not that. Oh, that's who you are. It's very difficult if you can tell me an issue, and I can't strongly say that is what they stand for.
They didn't have a proper narrative, did they?
No, and the same is true, by the way, of the Tory government back in 2019. They did two things. We're not Corbyn, and we'll get Brexit done.
Yeah.
And then no one knew what they were for. They were levelling up, and then they got sort of blown sideways by COVID and the Ukraine invasion and the energy shock. But the NHS England being scrapped, that wasn't in the manifesto.
Yeah.
The removing of the winter fuel payment for millions of pensioners, that wasn't in the manifesto. I think they are inventing it in real time while they're in office.
It very much feels like that. It's not as though they didn't have time to plan and decide what it is that they stand for.
No, they weren't doing it seems. And we, it's a bit on us as journalists. We should be asking. We were asking what we could of their manifestos, weren't we, all before the election?
People look around and trains still aren't working, and things still aren't working, and it still takes forever to get your driving licence.
We're about to commit boots on the ground to Ukraine, and I'm not sure that argument is made to our viewers and listeners.
Chris, I think it'll be the most unpopular thing they'll have done.
Oh, and that's a long list.
Yeah.
That's impressive if you can top that list of unpopular things that they've done. But I think if you're a young person now and you're thinking about going out into the workplace, this work ethic story, you think, well, should I set up my own business? No, you just wouldn't. There's no acceleration. There's no incentive, is there? Just feels like they've got the brakes on
everything. But they talk about animal spirits. So Keir Starmer writing today in City AM, which is a free newspaper in the City of London, release your animal spirits, which is an old term used by economists about getting the capitalism going. But look what they're doing. That's what I would worry about. Look at what actually you're doing.
Why would you? When you're paying that much tax, why would you? And that's why everybody's leaving who has an animal spirit. They're going away.
£40 billion rise in tax burden kicking off in April.
But the Tories weren't any better, Andrew.
No, I agree.
I mean, to be fair, the Tories weren't any better.
They were hopeless. They were hopeless.
We will find you reasons to be cheerful this morning. It might be in the tennis.
It's St Patrick's Day.
And it might be that we've got the next Wimbledon champion on the horizon. So we're going to be talking about that in just a moment. Thanks, Chris.
He's called Jack Draper.
See you later. So have you sprung into action yet with our spring giveaway? Your chance to win fabulous designer handbag, 2 designer watches and an incredible
£17,770 tax-free cash to spend on anything you like.
That's right.
An amazing prize pack. It could be yours. Here's the details you'll need.
Spring has sprung with a great British giveaway, and we're giving you the chance to splash out this season with an incredible £17,777 in tax-free cash. Jet off on your dream holiday, treat yourself to something special, or just save it for a rainy day. You'll also receive 2 brand new designer watches and a Mulberry handbag, so you can really look the part this spring. For another chance to win the lot, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Up next, there's been a 500% increase into asylum applications being rejected. Sounds like good news, doesn't it?
But why are they still here? They're allowed to appeal, and the appeals are bogged down.
We're going to talk about that in just a minute. Don't go anywhere. Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Patrick Christie's Tonight. Weekdays from 9 p.m.
What's your take on this then? Because my understanding is that you feel a bit disadvantaged as a result of the CGI characters here.
Yeah, absolutely, because it's taken away from people like myself who are professional actors, and these roles are made specifically for us. You know, we've got dwarfism, and it can boost our career, make money to pay for our families, and it's just an opportunity that's taken away from us because they're afraid of stereotyping or being derogatory, which is absolutely not.
Yeah, and this is not just in this film, it's actually happening quite regularly, isn't it, I think?
Yeah, because it came out a few years ago with Peter Dinklage saying that it was being stereotyping, having dwarfs playing dwarfs for Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And it's really wrong for people to say that. He's made his career, he started off doing that, and he's made a very big career out of it, and you have to start somewhere, and I think this is a big stepping stone for a lot of people with dwarfism.
Yeah, and look, I suppose in any acting, in a way, like, if someone is playing a character of a very tall person in a biopic, you would presumably pick a very tall person.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I don't really see why it's that controversial.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, it's absolutely pointless. I don't know what they're trying to get at, but I think it's this woke culture. They're afraid of upsetting someone, and, if we didn't want to do it, we wouldn't do it, but it's very well paid, it's a lot of fun, and it's what we love to do.
And you have actually been in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs previously.
I've been in it twice for pantomime.
Fantastic. And that was you, and you just enjoyed that. I mean, that was presumably that gave work to quite a lot of actors with dwarfism.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so many actors around the UK and around the world that do it, and it's so much fun. The kids have a great experience, and it's really important for them to be educated, because then they understand that there's different people with types of dwarfism, so they're not afraid when they see someone like that, because some people grow up and they're like, well, what's up with that person? But they start to understand the differences.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Thanks for joining us on Britain's Newsroom this morning with Andrew and Bev.
We're joined by Annunziata Rees-Mogg and Matthew Talbot in the studio. How are you both?
Very good,
Good.
you.
You well? Very
Yeah,
well.
good.
Very good. How are you feeling about your Labour government at the moment, Matthew, trying to take money out of people who are genuinely disabled who can't go to work?
Yeah, it's very frustrating. I think the thing that bothers me, and I think Chopper touched on it in the last segment, is what are Labour for? And what frustrated me further was Shabana Mahmood, the Justice Secretary, saying a couple of weeks ago in the media, well, the key is in the name, we're the Labour Party. Well, in that case, if we're the party of workers, why are 40% of people on benefits in work? Why is work not paying? Why are people not working? And if people voted for change and we stood on a platform of change, true change, because people felt fed up with the previous government in the last 14 years, why are we making the change making people poorer? We're taking money out of pensioners' pockets. We're taking money out of electorally ruining ourselves in rural areas in the north and elsewhere with the inheritance tax on farmers. We're now crushing the most vulnerable people in society in many cases, who are disabled to the point where they would love to work but can't. It's not my Labour government, it's not the Labour Party I joined many years ago to stick up for those who are vulnerable and try and protect those and give them dignity in many cases. Not my Labour government at all.
Annunziata?
I think that it's hilarious that the Tories got thrown out unceremoniously last year for talking right and acting left. And now we have Labour, who have come in on a huge landslide, talking left and seemingly acting right. I hugely support scrapping quangos. Loads of them need to go. There's over 400. We need to get rid of them. We need to return the democracy to the British people via Parliament. That's how our system should operate. We need to slash a completely unaffordable bill for benefits. That when you look at who is able to claim, some of the examples are ridiculous. A man who was getting a free car, and yet in the car park of his local gym, he could pull said car with a rope round his waist. Apparently he was too ill to walk. Clearly it is being taken for a ride. And I think what we need to do, and what Labour is getting kind of wrong at the moment, is to not cut the benefits for those in desperate need, but to cut all the people who shouldn't be on benefits at all. The people who are milking the system, who are using the loopholes and the special tricks and some fibbing to get the money out of the system. That's where the cuts need to happen. It has to be to the numbers, to who actually deserves the money and who would be better off working. That there are so many studies that show that being in work is better not only for your mental health, but for your physical health as well.
No, I agree, and I think if you can work, you have a moral duty in this country to do so. And having been on both sides of that fence of being somebody that struggles with depression and has spent weeks on end rotting in bed at the lowest points of my life and then gone into work at some point, you feel a lot better for having the routine, don't get me wrong. However, I believe in a compassionate welfare system that if you cannot work, and you would like to, many of them would like to, fine. And I always try and be cautious with this stuff and be fair, both to Labour, the Tories, whoever's doing things right. But I will be very clear on this. This, for me, is potentially a mandate for murder. And what I mean by that is if you are taking away... My biggest fear is that this is going to cause targets for sanctions, which we almost... It wasn't confirmed necessarily under the coalition government, but that to make the savings necessary, for this 6 billion that the government wants to save... You might not be able to make them savings without kicking people off these benefits that need them and are in need of them and can't work. Because of that, you're sanctioning people who will then have no money to survive, already depressed as it is because they don't have that routine of work and don't want to. And you better believe we'll see the same sort of deaths that we saw under the Conservative government of people taking committing suicide, leaving notes saying it was the government's fault and all these other things. And it terrifies me to think there's people waking up thinking about that.
Why are people so unwell? That's the elephant in the room that we're not dealing with, whether that is physically or mentally unwell. Annunziata.
It's gone up by 40% in 5 years by the lowest estimates. The government's estimate actually was 383%, which is an enormous increase. But when the figures are looked at slightly differently, the lowest you can get to is an increase of 40%. Do we actually think, the majority it's mental health, that people are 40% more likely to be so ill that they can never work?
No.
Than they were 5 years ago. I'm afraid I don't.
Well, when you lock up a whole quarantine healthy people, there was always going to be these reverberations down the line. It was always insanity to do that. It was so obvious that we were storing up a time bomb. Is that what we're seeing now, the explosion of that bomb?
I think Paul Johnson at the IFS said this morning that there's compelling evidence that shows mental health has been torn to bits for many people because of lockdowns. It was an awful period, don't get me wrong, we all went through. It was horrible, even those of us that was key workers and were going into work or whatever else. I think also we focused a lot on obesity as a country, and not that that's not important, but there are many children growing up who aren't obese but are unhealthy. And it's because of maybe the diets and the processed food and whatever else. I think we have to have a serious conversation about food in this country and what is food and what's good for you. I think the problem is there isn't enough time to talk about this. It's very multifaceted.
But this figure that shocks me, 1 in 5 of us, of the working population, is not at work.
Indeed.
It's 22%. That is a staggering figure. This is a rich...
And one in 4 young people that wants to give up work.
And go on benefits.
And go on benefits. That when you've got benefits that are more attractive than working, of course, they're appealing. And the ones that are most appealing are the ones that are associated with ill health. And therefore, people are trying to game the system. There is no question. I am not saying by any stretch that there are no ill people. Of course there are. There are disabled people. There are seriously unwell people. But there are a lot of people gaming this system. And actually, for all those people who have had mental health repercussions from the appalling lockdowns that clearly did have big impacts, and not least on the next generation who are now entering the workplace. But the best thing for them is to be in work.
I was telling a story earlier about a friend of my son who trained as a personal trainer, spent £2,000 on his course, and he now, at the end of the month, by the time he's given his commission to the gym and paid his tax, he's got 250 quid at the end of the month.
Yes.
How do you tell that 20-year-old you've still got to carry on? You might have another 3 years at working for 250 quid at the end of the month, living with your mum and dad.
And I think with unobtainable standards, by looking at social media, there is unfortunately a culture of instant gratification. If somebody else has got it, why can't I? And I think that feeds into young people's thinking. The social contract's broken. The idea that your friend's son is going to get on the housing ladder anytime soon without any assistance isn't going to happen. He's paying a fortune in rent if he's not at home. There's a whole manner of things, and then we see, you know, the studies that say that people are feeling less unpatriotic as possible. You think, what's the point of going to work? What am I paying towards as well? You're seeing governments, previous governments as well, squandering money left, right and centre, and you go, what's the point? And anecdotally, I see friends all over the show fleeing for other countries, and I can't say I blame them at the moment.
Isn't this the time, more than ever, almost, in modern history, where we needed a government to come in and be inspiring and motivational and to galvanise and say, we've been through this awful thing, we are going to pull together. We've got the polar opposite, Annunziata.
We have, and all we have to do is look across the Atlantic and see what a bit of energy, enthusiasm and patriotism can do for the motivation of a country. And Trump has many things wrong with him, but he has inspired the American people, and we needed that here. Instead, we've got the Reverend Keir Starmer, who, I mean, goodness sake.
Dull, negative.
He's had an anti-energy injection. I mean, the negativity, the monotone is killing us all, let alone the mental health
I'm afraid the chants are the same. I mean, the first thing that they came in and they talked down the country, talked down the economy, and it had a terrible effect on morale.
We need self-belief, but this is pervasive across all things. We just look at Stratford this weekend, and they're trying to decolonise.
Oh, yeah, we're going to talk about that later in the programme.
And he is an icon globally. Can we not have some pride in our country's genius?
No. Apparently not.
We can't have pride in anything.
It's a shame, isn't it, all the way? Yeah. Well, that wasn't very cheerful, was it?
No. But they'll be more cheerful when they come back.
We are trying. Annunziata Rees-Mogg, Matthew Talbot, thank you so much. Here's Sophia Wensler now with your news.
Bev, Andrew, thank you. Your headlines at 10:32. The Prime Minister is facing growing discontent as the government prepares to unveil a major overhaul of the welfare system. Work and Pension Secretary Liz Kendall will set out plans to restrict some sickness and disability benefits tomorrow, meaning only the most severely disabled will be able to qualify. But with some MPs already rebelling, the plans are likely to be opposed by those in the party who are concerned about the attempts to slash the welfare bill. It follows comments from the Health Secretary that the UK is overdiagnosing mental health conditions, with the number of people claiming disability benefits for anxiety and depression doubling in the past decade. Meanwhile, Economic Secretary to the Treasury, Emma Reynolds, agrees with Wed Streeting, but she assured GB News the most vulnerable would be protected.
We need to follow the evidence on this, but we have about 1,000 people every day claiming personal independence payments. That seems out of kilter with the prevalence of some of these conditions. We do need to help people and tailor their support, but we also need to look at the assessment system and see how that needs to be reformed. So yes, there are big problems here that we intend to solve, and as I've said, Liz Kendall will set out the package of measures. We set up the welfare state in 1945, and those with severe disabilities and the most vulnerable will be protected. We believe in the safety net, and we believe in helping those people.
In other news, a surge of failed asylum seekers has left the system struggling to cope, according to new figures. The number of failed asylum seekers waiting for an appeal against their rejected claims has soared by nearly 500% in 2 years and is blocking efforts to move migrants out of hotels. New data revealed there were 41,987 individuals waiting for a decision at the end of last year. That's up from just 7,173 at the start of 2022. The Refugee Council said the government risks simply moving the asylum crisis from one part of the system to another, with almost 40,000 migrants still housed in hotels. To the US now, where Donald Trump has said he will speak to Vladimir Putin tomorrow about ending the war in Ukraine and dividing up certain assets. The US president said he and Putin will discuss land and power plants when they talk. US officials have expressed optimism that a ceasefire deal could be reached within weeks, while Russia's deputy foreign minister has insisted Ukraine must be excluded from NATO membership as part of its ironclad security guarantees for a peace deal. Meanwhile, some breaking news: the UK's economic forecast has been slashed as experts warn over a hit to world growth and rising inflation sparked by US President Donald Trump's tariffs. Major economies, including the UK, will have lower rates of GDP due to the US's imposition of taxes on some goods imports. That's according to the OECD. Next year, the figure will be 1.2%, lower than the 1.3% forecast before Mr. Trump took office in January. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Crash Law 24 sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2954 and €1.1884. The price of gold is £2,312 and 14 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100's at 8,653 points.
Crash Law 24 sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Still to come, former #1 British tennis player and Wimbledon commentator Andrew Castle, fresh off the court this morning, going to join us to tell you all you need to know about Britain's next potential tennis superstar. He's called Jack Draper. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding in County Durham on the A19. 2 lanes are closed southbound. There's an accident at the Norton interchange. In Derbyshire, the A624 is blocked by an accident on Chapel Road in Hayfield. In Staffordshire, the A50 is partly blocked by an accident at the Silway roundabout at Stoke-on-Trent. In Lincolnshire, the A151 is partly blocked westbound by an accident between Weston and the A16 at Spalding. In Warwickshire, the A452 is closed northbound along Europa Way from the A425 towards Leamington for repairs after a lorry caught fire on Friday morning. In Pembrokeshire, the A477 is closed each way over the Cleddau Bridge after an accident causing queues. In Hertfordshire, the A41 is closed each way between Tring and Berkhamsted for repairs after an accident. And in Wiltshire, the A350 is partly blocked by an accident on the turnpike at Sedge Hill, causing queues. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is...
You're
the failure is...
deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie's here with an exclusive opportunity just for you, our incredible GB News viewers. We're giving you the opportunity to win a VIP studio tour right here at GB News HQ. Plus, you'll also get to meet yours truly. It's easy to enter, just head to gbnews.com/community competition and follow the easy steps. Don't miss out, enter now, and I'll see you soon at GB News. Full T's and C's apply.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Very good morning. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Bev. Now, you might have seen the headlines about this book.
Yeah, it's an extraordinary book. It's called The End of an Era, The Decline and Fall of the Tory Party, written by the former Tory MP and Minister Mark Field, who's with us in the studio. There's the book.
Hello there. Yes, lovely. Thank you very much for giving it such a great plug there, Andrew.
No, well, great. Well, I've read 3/4 of it, and we will talk to you about Liz Truss. Of course we will. But this is pretty much saying that Britain almost is in terminal decline. No,
I'm not quite saying that, but I think, I am a baby boomer. I mean, dear viewers, this man is even older than I am by a year or two, I think. But, listen, we had it all, really, didn't we? No war that we had to worry about. We didn't even have national service. Yeah. We went to university and had, those of us who did go to university ended up, having no debt at the end of it all, got on the housing ladder without difficulty. Yeah. And, I look at them, and I have teenage children, and the offer we are giving them is pretty lamentable. It's a much tougher go that they've got. Well, it is a little bit, and that's part of the theme is to say it is a difficult time for the next generation going forward. And I think part of the issue, and it's one of the themes of having been a Foreign Office Minister as well, is we have a sense of exceptionalism in the UK that isn't entirely justified by the events, and things are moving on very fast. And I think our generation tends to look at it and think Britain rules the waves, Churchillian, we won the war, and everything else. Most people, I think, under the age of 40 in this country, and certainly people in their 20s and students, are much more relaxed about the idea of Britain being a medium-sized nation, European nation with a great capital city, with a great history. And I just think that, there are a lot of things that we need to recognise that have got to change in this country. And, one of which I would say is, look at, all the debate at the moment about defence. Yeah. I mean, the track record for us, if defence procurement has been dismal. So the idea we throw a whole lot more money at it, it's a nightmare.
Mrs. Thatcher brought in a man called Peter Levine. Yep.
Yes, I knew Peter well. He was a former Lord Mayor of the City of London, part of my old patch. No, but I think part of the difficulty is that, again, if you think about it, we've got the smallest standing army we've had since Waterloo. We look at 40 years ago when we won back the Falklands. I mean, the Navy couldn't dream of doing that today. And And now we're saying we've got to throw a lot more money at defence, but we don't spend it wisely. And dare I say it, many Conservative MPs would be up in arms if we were doing the similar thing in the health service or on welfare without reform. And so there's a lot that needs to change, I think, in this country, and that's part of the theme of my book.
I'm just thinking about the next generation, because of course they would say, well, we don't need more bombs. We don't need to protect the country. Everybody is one big happy world now. So that march of globalism, I'm not saying they're right, but that march of globalism, within that, the sense of a British identity has disappeared. If I would say to my children, what does it mean to be British? I don't think they would have a clear answer for that.
Yeah,
look at America under Trump now. He's putting a light under that, this sense of who they are.
Well, Bev, I think there's something in that. Listen, don't get me wrong, I'm very proud to be English and British.
Too.
I mean, and my late mother was German, so I have sort of foreign blood running through my own veins, but I'm very proud to have made my life here, and I think in many ways we've got to understand why is it that tens of thousands risk everything to try and get over in boats in order to take advantage of that. So I'm not trying to be negative about where the future is, but I do think we have to realise that sense of exceptionalism. Our Navy doesn't rule the waves. We are a great country with a great history, but this is a modern world. Just look at the power and size of China and India, well over 1 billion people each, and they're the big players, I think, along with the United States in this century.
But that sense of decline has been mirrored in the decline in the Tory party, which is now the lowest parliamentary representation probably in decades.
Well, since 1832, since the Great Reform Act.
Of years.
Yes.
And you're pretty gloomy about the Tory party. Can it come back, Mark?
Well, I think it can come back. I think it's very difficult. I have some sympathy for Kemi Badenoch at the moment. I mean, the reality is no one wants to hear what we've got to say. We've had 14 years out. The brand has been badly damaged by all of the shenanigans that effectively started with Brexit and then 5 different leaders, 5 different prime ministers. And it's very, very difficult. And I remember what it was like to an extent. I first got into Parliament in 2001, so it's in the aftermath of 1997. And you can't write off the next election as a party leader. You've got to constantly try to hold the government to account. But the truth is that no one really wants to listen to too much of what the Conservatives have to say at the moment. And, the question is, what do? Do you apologise for the past, in which case, you play into the hands of your opponents, and that was part of the difficulty that William Hague faced 25 years ago.
And they've got reform now, too, which wasn't around.
We have, and I think it's going to be fascinating to see how politics plays out. And I think also what's happened is how quickly people have gone off the Labour Party. And, of course, one has to remember they only got 33.7% of the vote with this massive landslide majority. It was the 6th lowest vote share they'd got in the 22 general elections since the Second World War.
We can't have you here without asking the bit, of course, which all the tabloid papers particularly picked up on. You're very honest in the book about the fact that you had an affair with Liz Truss.
Well, I wasn't...
20 years ago.
20 years ago, it was public knowledge. So, I mean, obviously, this is a memoir in part as well. As I say, I got into quite a few scrapes when I was a Member of Parliament. There were a number of things, but 400 pages, hopefully there's a lot of other things that I have to say as well. And so...
were you torn about including it, though? Did you think if I didn't have to, I'd rather not?
To be honest, the story had never been told, and, part of that, obviously, both Elizabeth and I at the time were married, and, when you get caught up in one of these issues, you either go very, very public or you stay entirely quiet, which I did at the time. And to be fair, I hope I've dealt with this in a very dignified and respectful way. And it's not a kiss and tell. I'm not giving anything away.
And it was the end of your marriage.
But in many ways, the issue obviously was this is a lady who ultimately became Prime Minister. Yeah. I saw her at close hand for 20 years ago and understood some about her traits.
And you thought she might last 6 months, based on what you knew of her.
Well,
you were rather over-optimistic.
I did. I had an old friend of mine got in touch, and I'm afraid my first reaction was, Struth, I know what the first line of my obituary is going to be if she becomes Prime Minister. But secondly, given some of her personality traits, it didn't surprise me that things fell apart quickly. It was even more quickly than I thought.
But what were they? What were the personality traits that she had that meant that she didn't stick around there?
I think she had a great sense of self-belief. And listen, one of the lessons I learned from obviously being a minister myself was the failings I had. And I was never going to make it to the absolute top in politics. But you look at that sense of self-belief that many of our leaders have. And obviously I've known a number of Prime Ministers very well, not least actually Keir Starmer, because we were at the same college reading the same subject at the same time 40 years ago. So I've known him to a certain extent. And he has an inner steel and resilience and self-belief that I think is something that will potentially stand him in good stead. And I think he, for example, is much underestimated. And also he surrounds himself with a range of different views. And I think part of the difficulty that Elizabeth Truss faced back in 2002 was that, or 2022 rather, was that she brought in a lot of people who are just true believers rather than having people who might be able to temper some of her personality excesses. And I think that that's part of what leadership is. You need to have people around you who can add different things.
Mm.
I wonder if she'll read the book.
Interesting.
Well, I'm sure people might well have read what was in the tabloid press. But as I say, I hope it's dignified and respectful in what it says.
That's Mark Field. The book is called The End of an Era, the kind of fall of the Tory party. It really is compelling because, and I've given it a
glowing endorsement.
I did, yeah.
And I'm three quarters through it, and it is really good.
Listen, very, very kind of you. And, you know, I do speak a lot on economic and geopolitical affairs in the book. I have a social media handle, Right Mark Field, and hopefully people might want to link into that as well.
You ran half the world. You did Asia.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks. Now, if you search some winter sun, how is the forecast in our top European holiday destinations?
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Hello, here's your latest winter sun forecast brought to you by the Met Office. There'll be some unsettled weather across Iberia over the next few days. Elsewhere, some sunshine and a few showers too. As for Tuesday, we can expect a few showers across the Canaries, Madeira, some more persistent rain across parts of Spain and Portugal. The central Med looks brighter, 1 or 2 showers around, and then we run into some more persistent rain again across parts of Greece with some hill snow in places here too. As for the rest of the week, well, there'll be some warm sunshine to contend with, 1 or 2 showers too, and some more persistent rain out across western spots.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. We'll see plenty of sunshine across the UK today, a lot of fine weather in store, but temperatures are still pretty disappointing for the time of year. High pressure is generally in charge at the moment, and that's giving plenty of sunshine across the northwest of the UK this morning. Quite a frosty start here though. Elsewhere more in the way of cloud around, and that's making the frost more patchy, and also the cloud thick enough down towards the southwest to give 1 or 2 showers during the first part of the day. As we head through into the afternoon, cloud will tend to increase across the northwest, and on the whole, many southern and western parts of the UK will see a fair bit of cloud around, with the best of the sunshine by this point across the east and southeast of England, and temperatures in the range 7 to 10 Celsius. 10 down towards the southeast is 50 in Fahrenheit. So we end the afternoon with quite a bit of sunshine across the mainland of Scotland, a bit of patchy cloud up towards the Northern Isles, and across some southern and central parts of mainland Scotland there. For Northern Ireland, also some patchy cloud around with the best of the sunshine across the east of Northern Ireland, whereas for England and Wales, a bit of an east-west split to end the day. Certainly a fair bit of cloud across Wales and the southwest of England, with the best of the late sunshine reserved for some central and eastern southeastern parts of England. Going into the evening then, through the overnight period, the cloud will tend to push away towards the northwest of the UK. That allows skies to clear from the southeast across most areas. We'll pay the price for that though as we go into the early hours of Tuesday. Notice the blue colours appearing on the chart quite widely, indicating a pretty widespread frost as we go into the early hours of Tuesday. Temperatures across parts of Scotland could dip down to -7, even -8 Celsius by Tuesday morning itself. Even further south, temperatures a few degrees below freezing. So we start Tuesday then with that frost around, and that will only slowly lift across some southern and central parts of Scotland there, and elsewhere with plenty of sunshine around though, and fairly gentle winds. It shouldn't feel too bad out and about. That sunshine pretty much wall to wall for many parts of the UK. Just a bit of patchy cloud there towards the far northeast and an isolated shower there. But notice the temperature still pretty disappointing in the range 6 to 11 Celsius.
I'm Ellie Costello, and thank you so much for joining us here on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Britain's newsroom. Somebody here, Lady of the House, says, Bev, have you got a YTS kid working the camera? It's giving me a dizzy head. Sorry about that. We had a couple of technical issues during that interview. Now,
blame the producer.
Blame the computers. I blame the computers for everything, frankly, in life.
It's not us.
Right, Arian, good morning, has said the reason people are coming here is for benefit. They don't care about our country. And Christine says, we do need a border, Bev. Troops needed at the coast. We are being invaded. I think she means we need an army. I think maybe because we were talking
honestly, Keir Starmer wants to put 10,000, wants this peacekeeping force at 10,000 in Ukraine. We can't even protect the Kent coast.
Exactly.
It's a joke.
How does he not know that that's what the public are going to think?
And also, he says they'll be neutral. No, they won't be. Because they're there to protect Ukraine. And Ukraine, they are taking sides.
Yeah.
And it's just reckless, and I think it will be a terrible political mistake.
It will be awful.
And I have to say, when I'm in the Commons talking to MPs, you can't find very many people who've got much time for it.
No. And I tell you what, Keir Starmer, send out your son first.
Yeah.
Want to see you kissing him off at the airport and waving him goodbye. And then the rest of us might pay attention, because I can't help but think that's not what's going to happen.
Coalition of the willing, well, Italy have already pulled out of it.
Coalition of the Week, quite. Well, Dave says, morning, Bev and Andrew, Nigel Farage is making a statement at midday outside Parliament, and then he pays me a compliment. Thank you, Dave. He is, isn't he? Nigel Farage and Zia Youssef are doing a press conference at midday today, so that will be interesting.
We think it's probably something to do with the Runcorn by-election. Could be announcing their candidate, which could be very interesting.
Yeah, but stay here. Don't go anywhere. Is William Shakespeare racist?
Oh, it's ridiculous, isn't it? Just a question being asked, honestly.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. We'll see plenty of sunshine across the UK today, a lot of fine weather in store, but temperatures are still pretty disappointing for the time of year. High pressure is generally in charge at the moment, and that's giving plenty of sunshine across the northwest of the UK this morning. Quite a frosty start here, though. Elsewhere, more in the way of cloud around, and that's making the frost more patchy, and also the cloud thick enough down towards the southwest to give 1 or 2 showers during the first part of the day. As we head through into the afternoon, cloud will tend to increase across the northwest, and on the whole, many southern and western parts of the UK will see a fair bit of cloud around, but the best of the sunshine by this point across the east and southeast of England, and temperatures in the range 7 to 10 Celsius. 10 down towards the southeast is 50 in Fahrenheit. So we end the afternoon with quite a bit of sunshine across the mainland of Scotland, a bit of patchy cloud up towards the Northern Isles, and across some southern and central parts of mainland Scotland there. For Northern Ireland, also some patchy cloud around with the best of the sunshine across the east of Northern Ireland, whereas for England and Wales, a bit of an east-west split to end the day. Certainly a fair bit of cloud across Wales and the southwest of England, with the best of the late sunshine reserved for some central and eastern southeastern parts of England. Going into the evening then, through the overnight period, the cloud will tend to push away towards the northwest of the UK. That allows skies to clear from the southeast across most areas. We'll pay the price for that, though, as we go into the early hours of Tuesday. Notice the blue colours appearing on the chart quite widely, indicating a pretty widespread frost as we go into the early hours of Tuesday. Temperatures across parts of Scotland could dip down to -7, even -8 Celsius by Tuesday morning itself. Even further south, temperatures a few degrees below freezing. So we start Tuesday then with that frost around, and that will only slowly lift across some southern and central parts of Scotland there, and elsewhere with plenty of sunshine around though, and fairly gentle winds. It shouldn't feel too bad out and about. That sunshine pretty much wall to wall for many parts of the UK. Just a bit of patchy cloud there towards the far northeast and an isolated shower there. But notice the temperature still pretty disappointing in the range 6 to 11 Celsius.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
we're giving you the chance to splash out this season with an incredible £17,777 in tax-free cash. Jet off on your dream holiday, treat yourself to something special, or just save it for a rainy day. You'll also receive 2 brand new designer watches and a Mulberry handbag, so you can really look the part this spring. For another chance to win the lot, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. It's 11 o'clock on Monday, the 17th of March. Happy St Patrick's Day. Live across the UK, this is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
So we're in a welfare war. The government has buckled under pressure to keep personal independence payments in place, but they're still hoping to slash the benefits bill. Where do you think they should make the cut? The Economic Secretary to the Treasury, Emma Reynolds, had this to say to GB News.
There is nothing progressive about locking that many people out of the labour market.
Asylum appeals backlog. In 2 years, there's been a near 500% increase in failed asylum seekers appealing their rejected claims. That's 42,000 people who need accommodation, which you're paying for.
And do we have, finally, a new hope for Wimbledon? The Princess of Wales has congratulated British tennis player Jack Draper on winning the Indian Wells title. We're going to be talking about it to former British #1 Andrew Castle next.
Shakespeare's racist roots. The Bard's birthplace is set to be decolonised over concerns the playwright promoted white supremacy. Wherefore art thou, common sense?
And we're seeing a significant decline in work ethic. 4 in 10 Generation Z employees say that they are planning to leave their job and sign up for a life of benefits.
And happy St Patrick's Day. Celebration are taking place all over Britain today. We're going to check in on Downpatrick for their annual festivities.
I'm at St Patrick's Cathedral in Downpatrick, the burial site of the saint. Festivities and the carnival atmosphere will continue at about 1 o'clock this afternoon.
What a day for Newcastle United fans. They beat Liverpool to win the Carabao Cup yesterday, their first domestic trophy in 70 years. Just look at those scenes.
Don't they look happy?
Well, Liverpool had one for sorrow, Newcastle two for joy. The Magpies making history after 70 years, the first domestic silverware entering in St James's Park. I've been here talking to the Toon Army all morning about this momentous day here in Newcastle.
Day of celebration here, not if you're a Liverpool fan, obviously. Commiserations to you. But football is funny, isn't it?
My mate Kevin Maguire was so depressed about that result because he's a Sunderland fan, Newcastle being another Geordie team, deadly rivals. And I said, can't you have it in your heart to be pleased for them? They haven't won anything for 70 years. But no.
Don't you know nothing about this Labour Party, Andrew? That pretty much sums them up, right?
Doesn't it?
Right there, doesn't it? The be kind political left.
Yeah.
Can't be very kind about other people. Anyway, let us know your thoughts this morning. gbnews.com/your say. And if you were at that match, do get in touch and let us know how it felt. Here, though, first of all, your news with Sophia.
Bev, Andrew, thank you. Good morning. These are your headlines from the GB Newsroom. The Prime Minister is facing growing discontent as the government prepares to unveil a major overhaul of the welfare system. Work and Pension Secretary Liz Kendall will set out plans to restrict some sickness and disability benefits tomorrow, meaning only the most severely disabled would be able to qualify. But with some MPs already rebelling, the plans are likely to be opposed by those in the party who are concerned about attempts to slash the welfare bill. It follows comments from the Health Secretary that the UK is overdiagnosing mental health conditions, with the number of people claiming disability benefits for anxiety and depression doubling in the past decade. And Economic Secretary to the Treasury, Emma Reynolds, agrees with Wes Streeting, but she assured GB News earlier the most vulnerable would be protected.
We need to follow the evidence on this, but we have about 1,000 people every day claiming personal independence payments. That seems out of kilter with the prevalence of some of these conditions. We do need to help people and tailor their support, but we also need to look at the assessment system and see how that needs to be reformed. So yes, there are big problems here that we intend to solve, and as I've said, Liz Kendall will set out the package of measures. We set up the welfare state in 1945, and those with severe disabilities and the most vulnerable will be protected. We believe in the safety net, and we believe in helping those people.
Meanwhile, the former head of Ofsted has hit out at the Education Secretary, accusing Bridget Phillipson of putting the interests of unions ahead of children. Amanda Spielman, who stepped down as Chief Inspector at the school's watchdog at the end of 2023, called on Bridget Phillipson to abandon her plans before the damage is done. Writing in the Telegraph newspaper on the eve of the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill returning to Parliament, she accused the Education Secretary of bowing to the demands of unions. Critics have claimed the reforms in the bill will significantly curb freedoms for academies, state-funded schools able to set their own pay and curriculum that are unpopular with some teaching unions. And Shadow Education Minister Neil O'Brien told GB News Bridget Phillipson should ask herself why so many teachers are against her plans.
The schools bill, which really is a piece of vandalism, it's undoing the cross-party reforms of the last 30 or 40 years, which started with Mrs Thatcher and have continued ever since. And those reforms have worked. England schools have gone up the international league tables, where they've done things differently in Labour-run Wales and in Scotland. They've gone down the international league tables. And now Bridget is bringing the same ideas, the same failed ideas, to England as well. It's so depressing that she is pushing all this stuff through, and she should be asking herself, why are so many teachers, why are so many leaders of schools desperately worried about this bill that we're passing? And there's no sign of any reflection on why so many teachers are against this.
To the US now, where Donald Trump has said he will speak to Vladimir Putin tomorrow about ending the war in Ukraine and dividing up certain assets. The US president said he and Putin will discuss land and power plants when they talk. US officials have expressed optimism that a ceasefire deal could be reached within weeks. While Russia's deputy foreign minister has insisted Ukraine must be excluded from NATO membership as part of its ironclad security guarantees for a peace deal. Meanwhile, Ukrainian and Russian drone attacks have continued overnight. Kyiv Mayor Vitaly Klitschko said the city was attacked, while damage was also reported from a Ukrainian strike in southern Russia. Meanwhile, some breaking news. The UK's economic forecast has been slashed as experts warn over a hit to world growth and rising inflation sparked by US President Donald Trump's tariffs. Major economies, including the UK, will have lower rates of GDP due to the US's imposition of taxes on some goods it imports. That's according to the OECD. Next year, the figure will be 1.2%. That's lower than the 1.3% forecast before Mr. Trump took office in January. A surge of failed asylum seekers has left the system struggling to cope, according to new figures. The number of failed asylum seekers waiting for an appeal against their rejected claims has soared by nearly 500% in 2 years, and it's blocking efforts to move migrants out of hotels. New data revealed there were 41,987 individuals waiting for a decision at the end of last year. That's up from just 7,173 at the start of 2022. The Refugee Council said the government risks simply moving the asylum crisis from one part of the system to another, with almost 40,000 migrants still housed in hotels. A British tourist is missing after a fire broke out on a diving boat in Thailand. 26-year-old backpacker Alexandra Clark was reportedly in the bathroom when the blaze started on Sunday morning, local time. Local police have said at least 16 people on board the boat were tourists. We will bring you more as we get it. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Andrew and Bev.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom. Our blood is slightly boiling here about this Shakespeare story. We're going to tell you what the detail is. I think you will be as shocked as we will in just a minute.
But first, Britain's Jack Draper is claiming the biggest title of his tennis career after a win over Denmark's Holger Rune. He's only the fifth Brit to win an Indian Wells Masters final.
So in the last hour, the Princess of Wales has congratulated Jack, tweeting, "Congratulations, a fantastic performance. Well done." It's not very imaginative, is it?
Not particularly, but she does give the prizes out, doesn't she, at Wimbledon? So are we looking at a new Wimbledon hope? Who better to ask than former British #1 and Wimbledon commentator Andrew Castle? Andrew, lovely to talk to you again after so long. Is Jack Draper on the threshold now of something great?
Yeah, I think he is. Hello, Bev. Hello, Andrew. Look at us on this upstart GB News. I just love getting the phone call this morning. Lovely to still with you. Look, Jack Draper's the real deal. Earlier on this week, we had a do at the local tennis club, and somebody said to me, because they think I know what I'm talking about with tennis, they said, "Is Jack going to make it?" I mean, I'm like, yeah, he's going to make it. He already has. I mean, people forget that he was a semi-finalist at the US Open last year. And now, of course, he's broken into the top 10. He's number 7 in the world, and he's won Indian Wells. It's the biggest title you can win outside of the Grand Slams. He's been making it gradually for probably 2 to 3 years. He's been looking like a top 10 player. And now he is. So we've been blessed, really, with Andy Murray first as a potential Grand Slam champion, then achieving it, Emma Raducanu, who came out of nowhere, and now Jack, and his trajectory is up all the way.
What do we know about his background, Andrew? Does he live and train in the UK, or is he America-based?
Well, he's on the road a great deal of the time now, of course. I would imagine he'd be 25 to 30 weeks out of the country. As far as I know, that he's based here for things like tax purposes and for training as well. I don't think he's shifted his base yet. He spends a lot of time at the National Tennis Centre. Family background, Roger Draper was chief executive of the LTA. That's Dad. Mum, Nicola, ran him around everywhere as a junior, and she still takes the kids around at Parkside School in Cobham. He then attended Reed School. So he's very much a product of our system. I mean, he was privileged in one way in that his parents were committed to giving him the best possible start and knew how to do it. It's a tough game to start in some ways. It's still expensive. So he came from a tennis background. His mum was a very fine player, like Dad, and that's helpful. But you know, this kid has really, he's done it himself in terms of this level and the achievements that he's producing now. And I mean, he's a commercial. I mean, he's commercially so strong now as well.
Yeah.
I mean, just look at him. He looks the part. He is the part. You guys know what it is to be a success. It doesn't happen overnight. He's earned it.
He's a big, tall lad too, Andrew, isn't he?
He's 6'4", massive wingspan, left-handed, energetic, enthusiastic on the court. He doesn't stomp around the place looking miserable, even if he's losing. He's always animated, he's upbeat, he's easy to support. So, you know, when it comes round to Wimbledon, which is still what everybody sort of judges tennis on, the wider general public, you know, he should be a factor deep into the second week with the following wind, and if he avoids injury. So, you know, it's great fun for him. His team around him are fantastic. James Trotman, his coach, is a good lad. And, you know, they tried to bring in a super coach, they call him Wayne Ferreira, former top 10 player himself last year. That didn't work out so well. So it's back to basics. Jack's a good lad.
I don't want to be negative. We've had enough negativity this morning, and this is our positive story. But when we looked at, say, Andy Murray, there were some character flaws quite early on about being maybe a little bit petulant, which were quite obvious that might trip him up in his professional career. What does Jack Draper have as a potential Achilles heel?
Gosh, well, that's an interesting question. I don't think being really upset when you're losing, being bad-tempered is necessarily a bad sign. Andy Murray was so frustrated that he wasn't getting the job done that he got cross with himself when he didn't achieve really highly. But that same drive took him to the very height, to the heights of the sport. And I think Jack, in a slightly different way, has exactly the same thing. He gets frustrated, he gets angry, but he's channeling it so well at the moment. In terms of flaws, there's a couple of things to work on in his game, which they'll be doing. But as you know, it's the tiny details. It's the minute change of grip. It's the choice of shot at certain times. See, what he's not doing now, he's 23 years of age, only just 23. What he's not doing now is panicking when things don't go his way. There are setbacks in sport as there are in life, and it's how you handle them. He picks himself up so beautifully now. When he was serving for the match against Alcaraz, he lost his serve, had to serve for it again, served it out cleanly. These are the things you look for, that reaction.
We can't have you here, Andrew, without maybe giving Andrew Pearce a few tennis tips, because you play apparently, don't you?
I do like tennis. Andrew knows it's the only sport I've ever mentioned is tennis, and I was slightly in love with Roger Federer, of course.
Oh.
Well, I mean, you know, naturally, he dances around the court magnificently.
He certainly does.
Listen, Andrew, you might not want to say where I've actually played this morning already. Bloody well hurts, doesn't it? Oh, excuse me, my language. Really hurts. How are you physically, Andrew? Are you strong?
Not particularly. I'm a feeble 5'9", you know me.
And what's the best part of your game?
Forehand.
You like to play the forehand. So you've got the right grip. Do you have a coach? How often do you play?
No, I don't have a coach. No, I play probably once a month. That's it.
Well, I mean, if you put that up to once a week, you probably see the best of Andrew Pearce on court.
Yeah, you never know. Wimbledon is only round the corner, Andrew. Let's aim high.
I could enter the Veterans Tournament, Andrew.
I do want to see Andrew Pearce in whites. I do. It's just a thing.
Don't wish that upon us, Andrew Castle, not at least until he's tanned his knees. Lovely to see you. Thanks so much for joining us. It's brilliant to see you this morning. Andrew Castle there. Don't put your shorts on, Andrew.
No, I promise you I won't do that.
OK. Now, we're going to be talking about the Shakespeare story in a minute, because we've been saying all morning that Shakespeare is going to be decolonised. And what that actually means, because it can be quite difficult to understand what that means, means that the exhibitions that they have in Stratford-upon-Avon, have you been and done that? I love an open-top bus tour. I did the open-top bus tour, been in Anne Hathaway's house. Apparently, some researchers have come in and said, it's all very colonial in here. We need to point out that colonialism was not all good, and that the impact of colonialism on world history is bad, and that Shakespeare's work has played a part in that. In other words, let's not celebrate our wonderful English bard, the most brilliant writer.
Well, it has to be probably the most famous writer
in the world
ever.
And
his works are still being performed 500 years later.
Yeah, that's right.
Basic part of school syllabus.
So this is the Shakespeare Birth Trust have basically announced that it's going to, as I say, decolonise these vast museum collections. They said that Shakespeare's legacy has been hijacked to further white supremacy.
Well, so we want to know, do you think Shakespeare was a white supremacist? We're going to join now the journalist and filmmaker Femi Nylander and broadcasting historian Rafe Hadel-Manku, who is obviously very well known to this programme. Can we talk to you first, Femi? Is this long overdue, this apparent need to decolonise the museum in Shakespeare's birthplace?
Hi, Andrew. Can you name me 3 African authors?
Can I make you what?
Can you name me 3 African authors? Do you know the names of 3 African authors?
I'm struggling.
However,
one,
if we lived...
You can't even name one. So this is the point. This is the clear point.
But if we lived in Africa...
You're going to twist this.
But if we lived in Africa, we could absolutely... If we were African, we could absolutely name 3 African
everyone in Africa,
authors.
I can tell you now, many people in Africa know the name Shakespeare. This is the whole point of what we mean when we talk about cultural colonialism, the idea that throughout the whole world, certain people are celebrated as the best of the best. I don't think Shakespeare's a white supremacist. No one has said Shakespeare's a white supremacist. What people have said is the works of Shakespeare, etc., are celebrated as, and English works in general. If you go to study English literature at Oxford University, the literature in the English language is what English literature is supposed to mean. But what it means at Oxford University is it means Virginia Woolf and Shakespeare and Charles Dickens and English people, and that's fine. But the reality is that because England had an empire, the English language is a global language, and you have writers like Chinua Achebe. Right, you have writers like Chimamanda Adichie. You have these people. You have people writing in English in all these languages. You also have people who've written amazing works of literature in Arabic, which can be translated to English. Amazing works of literature elsewhere. I don't think anyone is saying Shakespeare was a white supremacist. I played Othello at Christ Church Cathedral Gardens when I was at Oxford University. I played in Romeo and Juliet at the Orange Tree Theatre as an actor. I've done Shakespeare, and I'm not. I don't see many things. I mean, Othello is not a character that's written as an idiot. He's not a character that's written as a barbarian. He's a character that's written as a tragic person who eventually takes his own life because of jealousy. It's a complex character. No one has said that Shakespeare is a racist. People have said that the fact that Andrew can sit here and not know the name of a single African author, one of the whole continents, and yet most people throughout the world can name Shakespeare, is to do with cultural colonialism and the fact that we celebrate certain people more than others.
Or isn't it because his works have been more enduring?
Well, I mean, his works have been more enduring partly because of the fact that England was the world power for so long. I mean, Shakespeare's works have been more enduring than a lot of English authors as well. And when you look at the history of things, I mean, you didn't have, if you talk about 500 years ago, 600 years ago, a lot of the places we're talking about, their stories were passed orally because they didn't necessarily have written text in that time. There's Nigerian stories that exist 500-600 years ago. There's, I mean, the most enduring texts in the world are obviously religious texts. But I mean, of course, his work is enduring. But the question we're asking here is why his work is enduring. Why his work will endure another 1,000 years, and Andrew will still not know the name of a single African author.
But Femi, I understand that as somebody that studied English literature and language at university, the idea that the canon has been decided by predominantly white men over centuries. I'm with you. But what we talked about this morning is a whole generation of young people in this country who have no pride in this country, and they're being taught to be ashamed of our Britishness, and we somehow have to get that balance right. Rafe?
Okay. I'm not being taught to be ashamed.
Hang on. Let me just bring Rafe... Hang on, Femi. Let me bring Rafe Hadel-Manku on. Rafe, I know where Femi's coming from when he's saying that the balance has been... that we have to somehow taper the success of Shakespeare because of the harms of colonialism. But we're also losing sight of the fact that he was a brilliant writer, and there's something to be celebrated there.
Yes, absolutely. Look, Shakespeare is a global phenomenon because he speaks to his plays are universal, and they have timeless insights into the human character, and they deal with issues that are just as relevant today and enduring themes of, love, war, family squabbles, and everything else. And we know that because, you see, Shakespeare is a global phenomenon, even in places like China and Japan, which have fiercely proud patriotic populations and a great history of literature in their own right. India as well, the Mahabharata and the Ramayana and so forth. But even they understand the universality of Shakespeare as the world's greatest writer. In fact, the Chinese asked this very same Shakespeare Birthplace Trust for permission to rebuild Shakespeare's home in China using Elizabethan techniques. They have national festivals about Shakespeare in Japan as well. And you had Kurosawa, the greatest director in Japan, doing Macbeth also. That's the universality over here. And the criticism that's being put out by this research, by the Trust and so forth, is that presenting Shakespeare as the world's greatest genius presents European culture as the world standard for high art. And I'm sorry, but Western culture is the standard for much high art. That's why so many Asians play European classical music, for example. Now, that wasn't the case when Shakespeare was alive. In the 16th century, Asia was the global powerhouse and cultural powerhouse, and Elizabethan England was a cultural backwater. But for the last 300 years, Europe and the West has stood head and shoulders above every other civilization. Femi mentions African authors. There are 2,000 languages in Africa, but as Femi's pointed out, most of those were oral. 80% of African languages don't have a written tradition, so they weren't capable of producing a Shakespeare. The most profound and sophisticated music, art, and culture has come from the West, and we need to lose the embarrassment and be proud to admit the genius of the West. Celebrate that Shakespeare was an Englishman, and that's what sticks in the craw of the anti-Western ideologues that run our cultural institutions, because they cannot stand that an Englishman is the greatest writer that the world has ever produced, and they will do anything to diminish and downplay that achievement.
OK, all right.
May I just come back quickly?
I've just thought of J.M.
10 seconds.
Did I not read J.M. Coetzee? He's an African author, isn't he, Femi?
Pardon?
J.M. Coetzee?
Okay, great. Well, I'm not familiar with their work, but
well, he won the Nobel Prize.
Possibly. Great. Now, if we
Femi, just we're so close to the time, but can I just say, is there not space for both?
On the screen, we have, was Shakespeare a white supremacist? The Trust, from what I read in the Telegraph article that I was sent, no one has said Shakespeare was a white supremacist. So that is just kind of scaremongering. No one has said that. The Trust has said that celebrating and saying what Rafe has said here, that he's the greatest writer of all time, is linked to that, is linked to the idea of European supremacy. Rafe mentioned classical music, Western classical music. There's notes in Indian classical music that don't even exist in Western classical music. There's microtones that don't exist in Western classical music, in Indian and Arabic classical music. There's so much culture outside of the West, which the West doesn't want to necessarily recognize and appreciate, because if you do so, then you recognize that you're not superior to them. And that Shakespeare, being a great writer, not being a white supremacist, I've played Shakespeare professionally on stage. And no one has said which Shakespeare was white supremacist. It's scaremongering to put on the screen, was Shakespeare a white supremacist, because no one has said this. However, you can also accept the possibility that there might also be other great artists, other great musicians, other great writers on Shakespeare's level.
And I think there is room
in other places.
There is room for both. But thank you, gentlemen, so much. Femi Nylander, who I would happily watch in Othello, I'd love to watch that, and historian Rafe Hayder-Manku. When this assessment was done on the Shakespeare location, guess what? They then secured funding from the Esme Fairbairn Foundation, an organisation that finances projects that boost diversity and inclusion.
I'm surprised he hasn't heard of J.M. Coetzee. I just checked. He won the Nobel Prize in 2003.
J.M. Coetzee, I think he's South African, isn't he?
What is African?
I think he's drawn a distinction between African countries and South African countries. But look, spokesperson for the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust issued the following statement in response to this story.
As part of our ongoing work, we've undertaken a project which explores our collections to ensure they're as accessible as possible.
Plenty more to come this morning. We're going to be sinking a few pints of Guinness to mark St Patrick's Day. Did you know we were going to do that?
I'm not.
Oh, you're on Lent. You can't drink. Oh, well, I'll have to drink them for you. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
I do think that there is extremities in how this has been approached with, you can't eat kebabs anymore. The Climate Change Committee isn't talking about banning meat. It's talking about reducing meat, perhaps having some incentives for plant-based diets. It's talking about doing small changes, not phasing out everything, doing small changes to move to a net zero future, a more sustainable future.
How can me not having a lodged on a combat, I don't know, China opening one coal-fired power station a week? Come on, this is pointless.
Well, there is other things that have been advised beyond just, reducing our meat consumption. There's things around the tax around flying and aviation, producing less fossil fuel imports and switching to more renewable power, upgrading the grid. There's a lot of other advisories collectively that moves us towards a net zero future. There is a few, of course, we can go down the route of, they can't eat the kebab anymore, but there's far more other things at play than just the kebab meat.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump, that man again, is just laughing at all this. Drill, baby, drill. You're not telling me that his cabinet are going to chow down on some quinoa. This is a red meat country leading the way, and if we had half a brain about us, we'd be drilling ourselves.
I come from an energy industry background. I work for a data intelligence company, Mapstand, as well. And what we are seeing is that what's happening in America is actually quite short-term thinking. It's not long-term thinking. Whereas in places in China, you're seeing a lot of innovation and green innovation because there is a huge economic opportunity.
Yeah, because they're selling it all to the West and polluting their atmosphere. We're offshoring our carbon footprint, and they're selling the solar panels back to us because we're the mugs.
We're also able to be the producers and also change our own energy so that we can also compete.
GB News, the People's Channel. I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Bev Turner. Thank you for joining us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom. And in CR3, Smog and Matthew Talbot are back in the studio with us. I really want to get to this story about Amanda Spielman, former head of Ofsted, criticising Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson. There's a long line of queue of us who've been wanting to do that. What's she criticising her for?
Her plans, basically. She says that she's putting the unions ahead of children when it comes to the bill that's coming forward, which I forget the name of now, but it's regarding the academisation of schools and no longer having unqualified teachers there, people that can be retired academics that can come out of retirement to come and help out. I think also the fact that academies can no longer set their own salaries for teachers. And I think
she's rode back on that.
She's had to, having not read her own bill.
Yeah.
That she didn't realise that there was a maximum limit and she was actually reducing teachers' pay.
Yeah.
One of the fundamental things about surely proposing a bill is knowing what it's meant to do and what's in it. And she's completely failed that test. She's also dismissed and ignored every single educational expert that has given any criticism, no matter how constructive, whether it's academy chiefs, head teachers, or indeed their former head of Ofsted. And in return, the government spokesman says Amanda Spielman should spend more time reflecting on her failures. Well, that's hardly the kind of constructive response you'd hope for when the criticism clearly comes from a good place. There are huge errors in this bill. They're really concerning that virtually the vast majority of secondary schools in this country are academies, whether they're grammar schools, church schools, there are all sorts of reasons.
Started by Blair, remember, too.
Of an academy
Started by Tony Blair.
Started by Tony Blair for good reasons, to give head teachers more freedom to provide the education the local community required. And that includes teachers who have out-of-teaching experience, that actually you want people teaching coding, for example, that have serious experience of coding, not necessarily serious experience of ticking boxes, getting an education degree to teach.
Yeah. Should we just briefly touch upon this Asylum's appeals hike, Matthew? The backlog has ballooned by 500%.
Of course it has.
Yeah, so I think in principle, people are allowed to appeal. That's the law. I think the problem for Labour is, I seem to remember it was party policy that there would be no need for hotels because they would guarantee that they would see refugees and their claims through within the 6-month period that normally is a deadline. I think going back to what we said in the previous hour, if you want to save money, you need to do a deal with the French and process people offshore before they get here, because we're spending, according to the Refugee Council, if we don't sort it out this year, it's £1.5 billion, which is exactly the same amount raised by the farmers and the winter fuel allowance cuts. But actually, if you manage to get on top of this, not only would you save the same amount of money, but it would be electorally successful and popular, no doubt. So I think they're also trying to fast-track this. They're looking at adding an amendment to one of the bills going through where your appeal would have to be heard in 24 weeks. I just don't know how you're going to do that. If you're not doing it now, what's the difference? How are you going to...
They're not doing it now, and the backlog is obviously growing. But also, 47% of those appeals are granted, and they're given the right to remain permanently. And that can't be correct because you have come here illegally. You are a criminal the moment you step foot on British soil because you have come across the Channel and broken into our country. Now, I think we should have an immediate removal of anyone who comes here through illegal routes. That is only encouraging the trade in human beings. Where do we remove them to? We should have stuck with Rwanda or a similar bill to make sure that people don't then have the right to stay.
I think the 51 Convention Act needs updating. We live in a very different world, and the reason I would like to see it updating is to see the difference between asylum seekers, true people who are fleeing persecution, and those that are economic migrants. The problem with the current law is that I wouldn't say they were criminals to get here. The only way you can currently claim asylum in this country is to land at British shores. And if you've got no other way of getting there, this is why we're seeing the ridiculous levels of
and that's insanity. Right, and Annunciata, Matthew, thank you so much. We're very late for the news. Here's Sophia Wensler.
Bev, Andrew, thank you. Your headlines at 11:33. The Prime Minister is facing growing discontent as the government prepares to unveil a major overhaul of the welfare system. Work and Pension Secretary Liz Kendall will set out plans to restrict some sickness and disability benefits tomorrow, meaning only the most severely disabled would be able to qualify. But some MPs are already rebelling. The plans are likely to be opposed by those in the party who are concerned about attempts to slash the welfare budget. It follows comments from the Health Secretary that the UK is overdiagnosing mental health conditions, with the number of people claiming disability benefits for anxiety and depression doubling in the past decade. Meanwhile, Economic Secretary to the Treasury, Emma Reynolds, agrees with Wes Streeting, but she assured GB News earlier the most vulnerable would be protected.
We need to follow the evidence on this, but we have about 1,000 people every day claiming personal independence payments. That seems out of kilter with the prevalence of some of these conditions. We do need to help people and tailor their support, but we also need to look at the assessment system and see how that needs to be reformed. So yes, there are big problems here that we intend to solve, and as I've said, Liz Kendall will set out the package of measures. We set up the welfare state in 1945, and those with severe disabilities and the most vulnerable will be protected. We believe in the safety net, and we believe in helping those people.
In other news, Donald Trump has said he will speak to Vladimir Putin on Tuesday about ending the war in Ukraine and dividing up certain assets. The US president said he and Putin will discuss land and power plants when they hold talks. US officials have expressed optimism that a ceasefire deal could be reached within weeks, while Russia's deputy foreign minister has insisted Ukraine must be excluded from NATO membership as part of its ironclad security guarantees for a peace deal. Meanwhile, Ukrainian and Russian drone attacks have continued overnight. Kyiv Mayor Vitaly Klitschko said the city was attacked, while damage was also reported from a Ukrainian strike in southern Russia. Now, Britain's growth prospects have been slashed for the next 2 years in the wake of Rachel Reeves' tax raid and Donald Trump's escalating trade war. Major economies, including the UK, will have lower rates of GDP due to the US imposition of taxes on some goods it's imported, according to the OECD. Next year, the figure will be 1.2%. That's lower than the 1.3% forecast before Mr. Trump took office in January. The Paris-based institution warned that UK inflation was likely to remain above the Bank of England's 2% target, limiting its scope to cut interest rates and boost the economy. Now, some breaking news. Thames Water has managed to avoid effective government ownership after an unsuccessful legal challenge to its financial restructuring. Appeals against the approval of a plan to restructure Thames Water through a loan of up to £3 billion has been dismissed. That's according to the Court of Appeals. The decision backs the High Court judgment of last month and means the UK's biggest water supplier is unlikely to be taken into special administration, a form of government control, in the coming days. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Crash Law 24 sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2970 and €1.1893. The price of gold is £2,312 and 79 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 8,644 points.
Crash Law 24 sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Delighted to say that Emily and Tom are back off their holiday. What have you got on the show this afternoon? Made it sound like you were on holiday together there, but they weren't.
We weren't. We were but a valley apart. But no, today, big news. At 12 o'clock, we're going to be going straight live to the Reform press conference. It's been a bumpy week for the Reform Party. The polling average, they're now no longer in first place, but in second place. Although there's not much in it, the question is, can they turn things around? What are they going to say, and how can they turn a new leaf?
Yes, Christopher Hope, our political editor, will be in the room. I'm sure he'll be asking some cutting questions.
Yeah.
I'm interested to know what you... Oh, sorry. You've run out of time already.
No, it's okay. Go on, quickly.
I'm interested to know what you make of what's happened over the last week, because I was, skiing, having a fabulous time while all of this was going on. Do you think it's a problem for Nigel?
I think he's got to take people with him. He's got to be more of a team player. It's a criticism you hear from lots of people that it's not a team player. But Reform is nothing without Nigel Farage. He's the charismatic leader.
Yeah, and perhaps they need to remember that. I don't know.
And Nigel would say, I've had the same team since 2013. The key team, he just has a few people come and go. Let's see. Anyway, that will be interesting, that press conference at midday. Up next, as Christians across the world observe Lent, we'll be bringing you the daily reflections from ministers around the UK. Oh, here is today's message.
The GB News Daily Reflection.
Hello, my name is Marjorie and I am a minister here in the north of England. I'm actually Irish. I was born and brought up in Dublin. And today, March 17th, is St. Patrick's Day. I have such fond memories of this day growing up, which was like another Christmas for us. The parades, the day off school, wearing green, the shamrocks, the parties on the streets, the pubs full at night. So who was St. Patrick exactly, and what is this shamrock all about? St. Patrick is known as the patron saint of Ireland, or the Apostle of Ireland. Interestingly, he wasn't actually Irish himself, but he was an active missionary to Ireland in the 5th century, and he is credited with bringing Christianity to the country, converting a pagan culture to believe in the great news of Jesus Christ. He used the visual image of the shamrock, a 3-leaf clover, to explain the Christian God: Father, Son, and Spirit. 3 separate persons, but one God. We don't remember or celebrate St. Patrick for the parades and the parties. He was actually a radical who shaped his whole life around his deepest beliefs. St. Patrick paid a price for his mission in life. He was captured and tortured. But he was someone who had simply had an experience of Jesus Christ and his incredible love and power. and his ability to set people free. And St. Patrick wanted others to experience this good God and the freedom that he offers us. I'm going to end by reading from St. Patrick's breastplate, a prayer of protection for believers at the start of the day. Christ with me, Christ before me, Christ behind me, and Christ in me, the hope of glory.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Happy St Patrick's Day, and it is a happy St Patrick's Day for me, the first time I've ever had a St Patrick's Day card. Isn't
I love
nice?
that story.
Really nice.
Tell the audience why.
Yeah, it's
just
from,
in case they weren't
because, as people will know, I wrote a book about finding my birth mother, who was Irish. She was Margaret Connolly, and her family in Ireland, in Baltinglass, in the west, and that side of Ireland. I met up with them and they sent me a lovely St Patrick's Day
That
card.
is so nice. I like that.
They are my cousins, effectively.
Yeah, it's brilliant. New cousins.
Yeah.
Now, millions of people across the globe are gathering to mark St Patrick's Day. Let's go to GB News' Northern Ireland reporter Dougie Beattie, who's in Downpatrick. What's happening there, Dougie?
Good morning. Yes, we've got a real treat for you this time. We have, because it's all about culture and history, and we have a troupe of Irish dancers and a trad band, and Josephine Brennan Keane. Josephine, you were the lead in Lord of the Dance, were you not?
I was. Many years ago, I was one of the principal dancers. I toured with the Tour of the Americas back in the day, about maybe 25 years ago now.
And you're passing your skills on to these children?
Absolutely. These are a much more youthful, energetic bunch than what I am now, and they are fantastic. They're the Brennan Muskelly McCormick School of Irish Dancing. So you can see we've got quite a troupe with us today, and you're right in the heart of St Patrick's country today. So you're in Downpatrick, so what better way to celebrate but with Irish dancing?
And we'll just see what they can do. Take it away, please. That's it from this hit in Downpatrick. We'll see you all later when the actual parade starts itself.
Amazing, Doogie. Joss, brilliant, fantastic. You were jigging away in your seat there, Andrew, weren't you?
I've been sea ripped a couple of times from the Michael Flatley show. Brilliant.
And to that little girl who fell over, you know what? Success in life is not what you do when it goes well, it's what you do when you go wrong, and you pick yourself up and you carried on. Well done. Here's some of our top European holiday destinations and the weather forecast.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello, here's your latest winter sun forecast brought to you by the Met Office. There'll be some unsettled weather across Iberia over the next few days. Elsewhere, some sunshine and a few showers too. As for Tuesday, we can expect a few showers across the Canaries, Madeira, some more persistent rain across parts of Spain and Portugal. The central Med looks brighter, 1 or 2 showers around, and then we run into some more persistent rain again across parts of Greece with some hill snow in places here too. As for the rest of the week, well, there'll be some warm sunshine to contend with, 1 or 2 showers too, and some more persistent rain out across western spots.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. A largely cloudy day today across the United Kingdom. Some light showers, but dry for most, and increasingly clear skies by the end of the day. And certainly plenty more sunshine tomorrow. Now, for the time being, we've got high pressure sitting in the North Sea. That's drawing in cloudier skies from the southeast, but already some cloud breaks are starting to appear across eastern England. Some bright spells also for more northern Scotland, and there'll be 1 or 2 cloud breaks elsewhere. But with that cloud, there will be a few light showers, particularly for the southwest during the rest of the day. A brisk breeze here, and feeling rather chilly once again, temperatures typically 7 to 9 Celsius. Nevertheless, it's towards the end of the afternoon that we see more extensive cloud breaks across Scotland, northern and eastern England, and some decent late sunshine before the sun goes down. Still some patchy cloud for western Scotland as well as Northern Ireland, although a few holes appearing in that cloud by this stage. And across much of the Midlands, Wales and the southwest, we keep cloudy skies as we end the day. 1 or 2 light showers once again for parts of Cornwall in particular. However, overnight, the clearer skies become much more widespread, especially across parts of Scotland, eastern and central England, and later on the south. So under those clear skies, temperatures will fall away. A frost is expected in places, particularly for the northern half of the UK, where temperatures will dip a couple of degrees below freezing, although enough of a breeze in the south, I think, to stir the air up and prevent a frost, but it will be a chilly start. However, through the morning, sunshine will soon warm things up, and there will be plenty of sunshine across most of the UK. Northern Ireland likely to keep a bit more cloud into the afternoon. Otherwise, it's bright blue skies, a bit of a breeze, and that will make it feel on the cool side, but out of the breeze with the increasingly strong sun feeling very pleasant.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody
in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Have you sprung into action yet with our spring giveaway?
It's your chance to win a fab designer handbag, 2 highly sought-after designer watches and an incredible £17,770 in tax-free cash.
And you can spend that on whatever you like. It's an amazing prize package. It could be yours.
Deb would like you to spend it on her.
What I could do with a holiday. Here's all the details you need.
Spring has sprung with a great British giveaway, and we're giving you the chance to splash out this season with an incredible £17,777 in tax-free cash. Jet off on your dream holiday, treat yourself to something special, or just save it for a rainy day. You'll also receive 2 brand new designer watches and a Mulberry handbag, so you can really look the part this spring. For another chance to win the lot, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm still reeling from that conversation about Shakespeare, you know, about decolonising the exhibit to make it clear that actually, basically, the UK was responsible for some atrocities.
The greatest writer, probably, ever. I mean, his work is studied around the world, and I mean, I think some of Shakespeare's plays are fantastic, actually.
Of course it is. My 13-year-old at the moment is doing Romeo and Juliet at school, and even though she...
Star-crossed lovers.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as has always been the case, they find the language very difficult, don't they, the youngsters? They're not mad on the Old English, but... Just looking at some of the homework with it just brings it all flooding back that it's just so brilliant. It was so brilliant. And I just think it's really sad.
There's some great black characters. Caliban in The Tempest. Oh, we're done.
More Shakespeare FM tomorrow.
Yes, we'll be back with you tomorrow, but up next it's Tom and Emily, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Well, stick with us here for Good Afternoon Britain. We'll be bringing you live the Reform Party press conference, an announcement from Nigel Farage. What could it be? Well, find out after the weather.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. We'll see plenty of sunshine across the UK today, a lot of fine weather in store, but temperatures are still pretty disappointing for the time of year. High pressure is generally in charge at the moment, and that's giving plenty of sunshine across the northwest of the UK this morning. Quite a frosty start here, though. Elsewhere, more in the way of cloud around, and that's making the frost more patchy, and also the cloud thick enough down towards the southwest to give 1 or 2 showers during the first part of the day. As we head through into the afternoon, cloud will tend to increase across the northwest, and on the whole, many southern and western parts of the UK will see a fair bit of cloud around, but the best of the sunshine by this point across the east and southeast of England, and temperatures in the range 7 to 10 Celsius. 10 down towards the southeast is